Hello and welcome to another amazing part of What If Garp Changed the Future? Professional Ranter wrote this amazing story. Please support them. Don't forget to like, sub, and leave a comment. Now let's dive in. Hancock laid back on her bed in her personal quarters on the Perfume Utah, on its way to Marine HQ for a warlord meeting. To think that my hawk left before me, she let out a small chuckle. Out of all of them I thought it would have been Jean Bay. She stared at the ceiling as she pondered the sorbet incident. He is able to summon forth a beast just like me, although his clearly works differently. She couldn't keep the smile off her face. When Amazon Lily had been sent a receiver snail to watch any broadcast the world government put out, she had been concerned that they may have had some secret weapon that would give them the edge against Garp. She was glad that no one was lost and that Garp won even. Hancock's smile faded though as she thought of something, her thoughts turning to the book and everything connected to it. She sat up on her bed and pushed out her observation hockey, making sure there wasn't anyone who would hear her. "Are you there, Death?" She could feel the moving of the ship stop, and looking at the pitcher of water on one of her tables, the liquid was frozen in time mid-swing up one side. "She is not here right now, but I am, my little empress." A distinctly female voice spoke to her from behind, and Hancock out of reflex whirled around to hide her back, only to be met with a giant serpent that came out of a black hole on her ceiling. Great Serpent? She could feel her voice crack as she looked upon the guardian deity of the Kuja, the god that even after she saw death herself, she couldn't bring herself to believe was out there. The great serpent smiled at her and touched her snout to Hancock's forehead. "I'm here, what troubles you? Why haven't you appeared before now?" Hancock scrambled off her bed to look at the great serpent properly. "You did not call out. But the Gorgon. Found and captured by me but brought before you by death. I could not influence your decision on Garp's offer despite how much I wish I could be there. I am glad you took his offer. The growth I have seen from you, from all of the Kuja, it warms my heart." The great serpent stretched itself further out of the hole it came from and curled around the bedposts. Something occurred to Hancock. "Are you the reason Garp approached me? I recommended you, but the others had recommendations of their own. We had managed to narrow it down to you, my hawk and crocodile. I am glad he chose you. It saved Amazon Lily from its fate in the old timeline." The great serpent's expression turned sorrowful. Hancock felt a chill run down her spine. What happened in the old timeline? "A buster call raised Amazon Lily to the ground while you were executed elsewhere. Why wasn't I there? I am the Serpent Empress. I would not just abandon my dash." Hancock stopped mid-sentence. "I met them, my soulmate. They're involved in Garp's grandson being executed, aren't they?" "Yes, but the fate of Amazon Lily and your fate has been changed. You don't need to fear it happening again," the great serpent assured her, snuggling into her neck comfortingly. "Your soulmate, they help you find others that you love so much, some that you even share a bed with alongside your soulmate. They bring you so much love and happiness. Don't reject them and be patient," the great serpent chuckled. "They're not the brightest and didn't understand romantic love back in the old timeline, and I don't think that's changed." Hancock flew forward and hugged the great serpent as her tears flowed. "Have you always watched over us? I ensured Fisher Tiger would find his way into Mary Geos. I guided the tides of your ship back to Amazon Lily and kept the Sea Kings away. My dear little Empress, I have always watched over you." The great serpent coiled herself around Hancock in a comforting hug. "Not once have I ever ceased watching over my Kuja." Hancock didn't know how long she stayed hugging the great serpent, and she didn't care. To know that her guardian deity had always been there, had always helped her, it brought a weight off her shoulders she didn't know she had. Paradise impelled down. Tsuru nodded at head jailer Domino as she finished her inspection to ensure Tsuru didn't bring in anything that wasn't allowed. "Do you know when I can speak with Chief Warden Magellan? I have orders for him." "Apologies, ma'am. Head Warden Magellan is currently dealing with his regular bout of diarrhea." Domino was clearly embarrassed to admit that. Tsuru let out a heavy sigh. "Please inform Magellan that if he does not lessen his time spent in the bathroom that he will be demoted. With the sharp increase in prisoners we've been having because of this crisis, we cannot have the head warden only being on duty for 6 hours a day. Tell him he needs to get it up to at least 8. Domino nodded. "Of course, ma'am. Do you want to talk to Kajaku?" Tsuru began to walk forward. "Have her join me on my way to level 6. I expect Magellan to be there once I arrive." Tsuru grabbed Domino by the shoulder before she could leave to do all of that and handed her a file. "This is a list of inmates on levels 1 to 5 that are to be executed. You have been chosen to oversee these executions. Once you have completed the other tasks, you may begin on this list." Domino took the file with slight trepidation. To be given the order to handle an execution was a hefty weight. "It will be done." She left quickly and Tsuru continued her walk. She unslung her rifle as she walked into level 1. While she didn't doubt the abilities of the guards, the prison was nearing an overpopulation problem. It wasn't helped by the 5 elders' insistence on questioning the guiltiness of the people Garp put in the prison. Many of them would have been executed by now, but that had been postponed until the investigation was finished. Tsuru had told them that if they didn't let her authorize the executions of many of the prisoners in Impel Down, then they would run out of room soon and the risk of a breakout would rise with that. They had finally relented after being told that, and the pointless investigation was abandoned. Grandma. Kajaka ran up to her grandmother, turning around and falling in step with her. How are you doing after sorbet? Not well, Tsuru admitted. The blockade was destroyed, so we lost 90 ships. The destruction of the modified Buster Call and the flagship and its escorts means we lost a total of 453 ships. Multiple trade routes were lost because 150 of those ships were from New World, destroying many of the patrols there. The emperors and pirates proclaiming themselves emperors were able to utilize the holes in the patrols and took over the trade routes. Currently our only real stronghold in New World is near the Red Line. But enough about that. Why are you? Tsuru gestured at the Impel Down guard uniform that Kajaka was wearing. Wearing that? Kajaka let out a heavy sigh. I've been here so long it was decided I should at least wear a uniform during my stay. The investigation just keeps giving the same results with every interrogation. They're guilty. The investigation has just been abandoned. Kajaka gained a hopeful look in her eye and Tsuru hated what she was about to say, but despite my best efforts to tell them otherwise, the 5 elders have decided to make you a permanent fixture within Impel Down as head interrogator, a new position they created for you. Tsuru could see the light leave Kajaka's eyes as she heard every word that was said. Unlike the other staff members of Impel Down, she'd had no intentions of working at the prison when in the academy. They made me a staff member of Impel Down? It was spoken with such a broken voice that Tsuru had to stop before the entrance to level 2 to pull Kajaku into a hug. To be a part of the staff at Impel Down, you needed to either be somewhat insane or be able to ignore what the prisoners did and said without issue. Kajaku wasn't either of those things. I'm sorry, I tried to convince them to let you return to your duty as a Marine, but they wouldn't budge on it. Tsuru hugged her granddaughter tightly. If you ever need a vacation from here, just let me know and I'll take you somewhere nice. It was all she could offer her, and if Kajaku ever decided to leave the Marines, it would be a way to help her disappear. Kajaku gripped Tsuru's coat tightly, wishing this wasn't her reality. Why did it have to be me? Why did I have to find this stupid devil fruit? Don't talk like that. Tsuru pulled Kajaku away and looked her in the eye. You chose your devil fruit and have trained countless hours with it. The only ones who are idiots are the 5 elders for putting you here and doing that stupid investigation. She smiled at Kajaku softly before pulling away and entering level 2. They didn't talk anymore until they made it to level 6, where Magellan was waiting for them. Admiral Tsuru, what do you want from level 6? He asked as he opened the doors. There is a prisoner here that it has been decided will become a warlord. I was against it, but Kong made an argument with the 5 elders for him to become one. By the way, how are things going after the uncovering of Shiryu's corruption? When it had been discovered that Shiryu was abusing his power to torture and murder inmates, they had been forced to scramble to keep it on the down low while they arrested and put him in jail. While they did use torture at times, it was to question inmates and required special permission, much like the execution of inmates. Shiryu ignoring the procedure and the hierarchy of authority meant that they couldn't just turn a blind eye, not that Tsuru and Sengoku had planned to. As you've noticed, Domino took his place and we're still looking for someone to take her old position of vice head jailer. Other than that, things have been running smoothly, Magellan said as he and Kajaka followed behind Tsuru. I see your uniform fits well, Kajaku. I hope it works well for you during your stay. Kajaka flinched and looked away. The 5 elders have decided to make me a permanent staff member here and named me head interrogator of Impel Down. Magellan wasn't able to say anything at first. This was the first he had heard of it. He hadn't even been consulted about it despite being the head warden. I'm sorry. He knew of her feelings being stationed here and he didn't blame her. To work at Impel Down, one would see countless horrors. Even for those who chose to work there willingly, it could be hard at times. Tsuru stopped before a cell. Douglas Bullet, are you still alive? Nope, what do you want? Douglas Bullet's deep voice echoed out from the cell. It has been decided to extend you an offer of becoming a warlord. What is your answer? Bullet let out a loud laugh. You must be pretty desperate to ask me to become a warlord. Just how bad is this crisis I've been hearing so much about? A recent incident resulted in the destruction of 453 ships and hundreds of Marines dead or missing in action. Mihawk also resigned from the warlords at the end. Finally, Fleet Admiral Sengoku lost in a one-on-one fight with Monkey D. Garp. Those two actually fought? Damn, I remember Buggy and Shanks fighting about who would win constantly for months. I should have made a bet of my own with them. Bullet chuckled. Is that why you want me to join the 7 warlords? It was actually made into the 10 warlords some time ago. With you the number will be 8. Anything else you want to know? Bullet rattled his chains slightly. What if I decided to become Pirate King? Kajaku and Magellan tensed behind her, but Tsuru smirked. The thing is, you are the only one who considers the title of Pirate King to mean the strongest in the world. The world government though already has a title for such a person, long before Roger became king. If I do this right, would you like to hear who holds that title? Really? Bullet's interest was clearly piqued. Tell me. Angel of War, it's not a title that is shared with the public, but it is used to indicate an individual who shows great skills in combat and whose feats number in the thousands. Garp is the current holder of that title. He earned it sometime after God Valley with the destruction of a dozen pirate fleets that had decided to form an alliance single-handedly. Since then he continued to prove why he earned that title, especially with his many fights with Roger. Bullet is a wild card. If he goes rogue after the world government lets him out of prison, then the already fractured trust the people have in them will crack further. Tsuru grinned widely internally. She hadn't made up the Angel of War title, it was something that did exist and that Garp held, although he didn't know about it. Everything that she said was the truth. So your answer? Bullet let out a loud laugh. Fine then, I'll become a warlord and become the Angel of War. Tsuru gestured for Magellan to open the cell and let Bullet out. Good luck getting that title. Garp would need to die to lose it. Well, I have your first assignment as a warlord. Tsuru walked off and Bullet fell in step with her, Kajaku and Magellan right behind them. They stopped in front of a huge cell with several giants within, including San Juan Wolf. We need all the giants within this cell executed, especially San Juan Wolf. Bullet cracked his neck. It'll be nice to have a quick stretch after being let out after so long. He jumped in between the bars and began his slaughter. Is this a wise idea? Magellan voiced his concerns. Like I said, it wasn't my idea. Please call some executioners down. An admiral has to oversee the executions of any inmate of level 6, and I have more work to do, so we need to hurry this along. Tsuru walked away as Wolf tried to tear the cell door off to no effect as Bullet tore into him. 2 executioners with their spears came running up to them as Tsuru approached the first cell. Give us a Valo Pizarro and there will be no troubles. The prisoners immediately brought him forward as the giant's screams died down. Magellan brought him out and chained him to the middle of the small courtyard-like area near the entrance of level 6. Kill him. The executioners ignored Avalo's pleas and stabbed him in the chest and through his heart. He slumped over and Magellan unchained him and tossed him aside. Bring Katerina Devon here, Tsuru ordered, and Magellan left to retrieve her. He quickly came back with the serial killer struggling in his arms as he chained her to the execution area. Kill her. The executioners did as they were told, and Devon took her last breath. Vasco shot. Magellan tossed aside the corpse and went to retrieve the next execution. While they waited, Bullet came and stood beside Tsuru, saying nothing and stained in blood. Magellan dragged Shot into his chains, and with a simple gesture from Tsuru he was executed. Dabi Ibadanbo. Bullet watched as Magellan left to retrieve the next inmate. Why not just have me do all the executions? We're not killing all of the prisoners, just ones that we need to get rid of, either because they're more trouble than they are worth, or their scheduled execution finally came. Magellan put Ibadanbo in chains and the executioners immediately killed him upon Tsuru's nod to them. Burndy World, Magellan left once more. Besides, you killing the giants saves us some time. Bullet watched as Burndy was put into his chains. Alright, so what will I be doing once we're done here? A shower, Tsuru said bluntly as Burndy World was chained to the execution spot. Do it, and was immediately executed. Bullet let out a loud laugh at Tsuru's bluntness. You're pretty brave, aren't you scared of me? Of course I am. Your strength is often compared to Roger's, but I've spent my entire life facing people who were stronger than me. It's next to impossible to intimidate me. Tsuru quickly checked her list as she slung her rifle over her shoulder. Patrick Redfield. So you conquered your fear, then why admit that you're scared of me? Tsuru once more watched as Magellan put a prisoner into the cuffs. Kill him, and as for your question, it does me no good to hide my fear from you. You'll just try and provoke it out of me to prove some point of yours, a point that I'm too busy to care about. For the final one, Shiryu. Magellan straightened his back while Bullet chuckled. Are you certain? He was only recently imprisoned. Due to his knowledge of the prison as well as his many crimes, the 5 elders deemed it necessary to bring his execution sooner than what we normally do, Tsuru answered. Magellan nodded and quickly left. He just as quickly came back with Shiryu, who much like Redfield didn't struggle. "Tsuru, this is a surprise. Why is he out?" He jerked his head at Bullet as he was chained down. Tsuru didn't immediately give the order to kill him as she waited for someone to arrive. "Bullet has been made into a warlord. It's a shame you couldn't keep your bloodlust in check, Shiryu. You were such a good head jailer, although I am quite certain Domino will rise above you." And just as Tsuru finished saying that, Domino walked in holding Shiryu's sword. "Thank you, Domino." Tsuru grabbed the blade and held it up, inspecting the scabbard and hilt before unsheathing it slightly and seeing the blade glint slightly. "Good condition. How are the executions going?" "We finished levels 1 to 3 and are almost done with 4, Domino reported. "Excellent, you may return to overseeing those." Tsuru dismissed Domino and then turned to Kajaku and handed it to her. "Am I to dispose of it?" Kajaku tilted her head slightly as she held the blade. "No, while Beethoven is certainly useful, you will need a blade within this prison, and I'd prefer not to see this blade go to waste," Tsuru said and watched as Shiryu glared at Kajaku. "You may now kill him." The executioners immediately stabbed Shiryu, ending the former head jailer. Tsuru turned to Magellan. "With more prisoners on the way, executions are going to become more commonplace. Please be prepared at all times for the possibility of receiving an admiral for the execution of a level 6 prisoner." Magellan nodded. "Understood. Should we expect to receive more lists soon?" He motioned for the executioners to leave. "Send someone to handle cleanup," he told them as they left. Tsuru began to head to the entrance of level 6. At least one every 2 months, possibly more though depending on the occupancy percent. Bullet walked right beside her as they made their way through the prison to the top, the prisoners being quieter than they once were. As they neared the entrance to the prison itself, Tsuru saw a pale man being brought into the prison. "Well, you showed up sooner than expected, Lafitte." Tsuru then unslung her rifle and shot the demon sheriff in the head. "He was to be listed for execution, didn't think he'd come in today," she explained to Magellan. Bullet smiled wide. "I think I'm going to like working with you." South Blue, the granting wish. Garp waved to the receding island as they sailed away. Everyone was patched up and they had to get back to Amazon Lily quickly before the Marines could increase their presence in the sea and make it harder for them to leave. "Alvia, how are you doing?" he asked as he turned to look at the ship's historian who leaned against a crutch. "Not the worst injuries I've had," she said softly. "Do you need anything?" Garp looked at her in concern. She had been beating herself up for letting that Marine press the 2 snails she'd held. "Later, right now I think Kuma could use some help wrangling Bonnie, she's got a lot of energy." He smiled at her and patted her shoulder lightly as he went below deck and to his room. As he closed the door, he could feel the ship suddenly stop moving. "Who am I talking to?" "The name's Sky. Nice to officially meet you, Garp." Turning around, Garp was met with a thin yet muscular man who wore a loose open-chest shirt and pants with no shoes. "You've done something quite interesting with Sorbet, you know that, right?" Garp took a seat at his desk while Sky reclined on his bed leaning against the wall. "And what exactly was that?" "The death of those 3 CP0 agents, specifically Guernica, wasn't supposed to happen so soon. In the original timeline they played a part in something quite big, but now things have changed even more regarding that event," Sky said as he twirled some of his hair. "You're talking about the original timeline," Garp observed. "Is this change good or bad?" "That depends on who you ask. To you and me it appears to be good, but to the world government it is bad. That however doesn't matter. I'm here to ask you how much you think you've changed since starting this journey." "Not enough if Luffy still loses his smile," Garp immediately answered. Sky laughed and it sounded like roaring winds. "A good answer. Could you bring out that lion?" Garp activated his haki and the lion came out. "Ah yes, it is her." "Her?" Garp looked at the lion's mane. A rare lioness who could grow a mane, although Nemia is already a unique lion even without having a mane. Garp raised an eyebrow at the name drop. "Nemia was once the companion of one of the gods who entered the reincarnation cycle. Her choosing you as her new partner is certainly a surprise but not an unwelcome one." Sky petted Nemia behind one of her ears and the lion let out a loud purr. "She was originally known as the Nemean lion, a beast with impenetrable skin. Take good care of her. I don't know if she needs to eat, but I'll do my best. Is this all that you wanted to talk about?" Garp pet Nemia as they trotted over and rested her head on his lap. "No. What exactly do you know of the past timeline?" Sky asked as he sat up straight and crossed his legs. "Just what I've been told by you guys." "Why?" Sky let out a heavy sigh. "During the War of the Divine there were many gods with the ability to manipulate time. They would often go into the past with knowledge of the future they would use to their advantage. We created a restriction on the domain of time that the gods would not be able to remember the past timeline when going back into the past, and that when trying to view it from the new timeline their vision of it would be somewhat obscured so that they could not use it to their complete advantage. The only way to have the complete knowledge of the old timeline was with an embodiment of a wish which only our pantheon could create. Garp tilted his head. Why are you telling me this? A former champion of ours enslaved the embodiment of a wish that worked with them to prevent an old timeline, resulting in the creation of the world government. Sky gripped their leg tight, bunching up their pants. When you go marry Geos, free her. I can't say if you'd be able to beat our former champion, but freeing her and letting her return to us would rob the world government of a vital tool. Why is she a vital tool? Garp asked as he understood why the embodiment of Luffy's wish didn't often come down to talk with him. The gods didn't want to risk their former champion grabbing them. We managed to find a way to hide from her when we stopped time or even go back in time like we did with Luffy's wish, but she still remembers the timelines before the last one, and the ex-champion may try to use that knowledge or even her status as an embodiment to capture Luffy's wish. Sky stood up from the bed and stood in front of Garp. As long as she remains a tool of the world government, we can never truly ensure Luffy will keep his smile. Something occurred to Garp. You're near omnipotent. Anything that can be seen by the sky you can see, but that's not all it does, is it? Sky chuckled. Yumi was right, you can be perceptive. You are right about my near omniscience of the goings-on of the world, but what it also allows me to do is observe the physical representation of the timeline. With the embodiment I'm able to piece together events that happened in the old timeline and see if they have happened again in this timeline, of course changed but still having a similar impact, although music is able to give me a more accurate reading on the changes given her abilities. It also allows me to observe when stabilizations occur to a timeline. Stabilizations. Sending something back in time inherently changes the past beyond the point that we sent that thing to. Such as God Valley, in the old timeline Bogard was there with you, but in the new timeline he wasn't. Stabilizations essentially change the ages and fates of people and places, although even with the wish's help I can't find all of the stabilization events to document them. As you continue on your journey, more stabilizations will happen, especially as certain people are killed or changed. Sky explained, like how most of the Blackbeard pirates are now dead, I'll need to check on Jesus, Augur, and Q, can't have any risk of Teach getting any of them. What about the events? Sky ran a hand through his wavy hair. Best way to explain that is the events will still happen in the new timeline, but how they happen and their full impact on the world is what changes. For instance, in the old timeline, Sengoku stopped you from killing Akainu after he killed Ace. Sky stopped as he heard both Garp and Nemia let out growls. Good to know she already has a good connection to you. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Him doing that can be considered you two coming to blows, and it happened again in this timeline at Sorbet, just on a much larger scale. Does that make sense? I understand it enough, Garp said as he petted Nemia. I'll free the wish at Mary Geos, you have my word. Sky smiled at Garp. I can see what Shaper meant, you act like an old friend of ours. Be well, Garp. Sky disappeared and time resumed. Garp looked down at Nemia and continued to pet her. Thank you for helping me protect my grandson, he said to her, and she let out a small roar, lightly headbutt his hand for more pets. He chuckled as he indulged the big cat. New World, Egghead Island. Dr. Vegapunk let out a heavy sigh as he worked in his makeshift lab as Egghead's construction was still underway. Damn you, Caesar, he said aloud, something he had been doing often out of frustration for his former lab partner. He'd been forced to move to Egghead early before it was complete because of Punk Hazard's destruction, and his research had slowed as he waited for construction to complete. The only thing that had been completed ahead of time was the site that held all of his brain that he'd been forced to cut out when it got too big. I'll need to see if I can request more manpower, or maybe I should consider automatization. Given the crisis going on, I can't rely on the world government to send more people to me. Automatization is better for you in the long run, a voice spoke up from behind him. Vegapunk whirled around and was met with a man wearing tight pants and a blouse with a slightly muscular build. He wore dress shoes and his nails were painted purple. Who are you? How did you get here? He hadn't heard anyone come in, and yet here was a complete stranger sitting in his lab. He ran to and opened the door only to see everything frozen, as though time had stopped. Your devil fruit is quite powerful. Are you here to kill me? The man let out a loud laugh, and Vegapunk was reminded of an actress he had seen who sang quite beautifully, although he couldn't quite remember her name. I'm not here to kill you, and I don't possess a devil fruit. Then how did you do this? Vegapunk pointed at the people frozen in time. Haki can't do this, and if it is not a devil fruit, then how? He wanted to know. He was a scientist after all. Suddenly the man was covered in a bright flash and all Vegapunk could hear was the most beautiful melody he'd ever listened to. As the light and melody died down, the person before him had changed into a tall woman wearing a long flowing skirt and a dress shirt with a vest over it. She wore boots and her nails were now painted green, yet Vegapunk knew the woman was also the man he had spoken to, but he didn't know how. Does that answer your question? Vegapunk stared at her for a moment. I have never heard not even a tale of any species being able to do what you just did, not even from O'Hara's books. You are not of this world, what are you? The woman smirked. I am a god, you can call me music. A god, being able to stop time like this in that melody, it makes sense, yet why am I talking with her? Vegapunk thought to himself. Why are you here then, music? He closed the door and returned to his seat. Caesar Clown has begun mass production of the smile fruits. Vegapunk's eyes widened. What? That idiot. They're prototypes to making actual artificial devil fruits. They're not meant to be eaten by people. At most we'd feed them to weapons. What is he thinking? Music smiled wide. Good, glad to see you disagree with him doing that. He set up an orchard and so far has managed to make 500 smile fruits. The doctor gaped at that amount. How? It shouldn't be possible for him to have done that when the accident at Punk Hazard only happened a few days ago. He made a deal with Doflamingo behind you back to make them. In return he earned a warlord's protection for when he inevitably fucked up to the point he was wanted by the world government. Music picked up a pen and twirled it between her fingers. The orchard has been in development for about a year and only now has been able to produce the fruits. With it now producing smile fruits daily, Doflamingo has begun to sell it to plenty of people who don't care about their subordinates. They're planning to extend an offer to Kaido as well. Vegapunk looked at the god before him who had begun to grip the pen tightly. You don't like their existence, the smile fruits. Why do they anger you so much? Because I'm the one who ensures a devil fruit's successful creation, ensuring the song that it contains is on key yet is able to meld with the melody of any who eats it. Vegapunk gasped as music stood up. Sure, the other gods created devil fruits based on myths and legends, the gods and beasts of old, but the ones based on dreams and hopes? That was me. I looked upon the wishful and hopeful and created the fruits based upon the melody they created as they wished for something better, for something to help them. Countless Zoans, Paramecias, Logias were created by me. Even the fruits created by the other gods needed my help. And to see my creations bastardized by that two-bit scientist. Music was panting as her body began to change. She grew shorter until she was as tall as Vegapunk and her clothes turned into a sundress with heels. Her nails turned yellow and her hair, the only thing that hadn't changed with the previous transformation, changed from brown to orange. The melody of the world is off-key because of those blasted fruits, and unfortunately I don't exactly have the time to create enough devil fruits to counteract them by myself. Vegapunk picked up the pen music had dropped and put it back on the table. Could you not ask the other gods for aid? They have their own things to handle right now. Music returned to her seat and rested her head on her hand. Normally talking to you like this would be against the rules, but we're currently bending them for various reasons, so the others gave me the go-ahead to talk to you. Why me? Vegapunk tried to figure it out, but the only idea he could think of just seemed ludicrous. You're going to help me create new devil fruits to counteract the smile fruits, and I don't mean copies of existing devil fruits. Music leaned forward with a large smile. We'll start off with new models of already existing devil fruits, all the while I'm teaching you how to forge my creations. Consider it an apprenticeship of sorts. Vegapunk gaped at the god. You are willing to teach me how to create a devil fruit? What do you want in return? Music chuckled. You creating new devil fruits is what I need. Now before I unfreeze time, let me tell you something about the types of devil fruits, alongside my lesson plan for you. Vegapunk leaned forward eagerly. We'll of course start off with Zoans when creating devil fruits given your expertise in them and you are aware of mythical Zoans. However, Logias have a similar subtype, legendary Logias. They embody weather patterns and elements of the divine and are far more powerful than the regular version by I'd say a factor of 10. Once you have a solid grasp on creating Zoans, we'll begin creating Logias, and once you've mastered each of them, we can move on to creating legendary and mythical. Paramecia will be the most difficult, though, given they are often far more abstract in what they do than Logias or Zoans, and a special grade Paramecia can act like either a Zoan or a Logia, so creating those will save until you've gotten a handle on creating mythical and legendary. And these fruits, they'll appear elsewhere when the person who ate them dies? Vegapunk leaned forward as he wrote down what Music had told him. I will teach you how to create the melody proper for each devil fruit so that it will be connected to the Eden tree and be free to appear elsewhere when their users die. I will teach you everything there is to know about forging devil fruits, and they will be real devil fruits, not artificial or smile, real devil fruits. Vegapunk was vibrating in his seat. How? How will you teach me? Music pointed at her eyes and suddenly 2 stars were there instead of her pupils. Although they were black, my eyes, when activated, allow me to view the melody of anyone or anything I look upon, and through that melody I am able to learn everything that person knows and has experienced. I can also use my eyes to impart the knowledge I hold upon others, which is how I'm going to teach you part of the time. Part of the time? You'll also need your own experience. Knowledge gained without experience is worthless. Besides, if I impart too much knowledge onto you, we'd run the risk of driving you mad. Music suddenly transformed into a mouse and sat on the chair. I'll remain in this form while time is unfrozen, and I'll help guide you through creating devil fruits as this mouse. I'll only impart knowledge onto you when time is frozen. We don't want to risk anyone finding out about me and stealing your notes and creations. Vegapunk stood up and stepped forward and reached his hand. It would be my honor to learn from you. Music scurried into his hand and up his arm until she stood on his shoulder. What would you have me do first? Thanks to the me from the old timeline, I know how to begin. First, I want to see what you know already, so we'll create an artificial devil fruit, let's say a copy of the cat fruit model leopard. Will that not affect the world's melody? Music smiled at Vegapunk. No, it won't. I've seen the results of an artificial devil fruit, and it doesn't send the world's melody off key. Someone else was able to create an artificial devil fruit before me? Vegapunk tilted his head. Just the one. It was a copy of the fish fruit model Azure Dragon, although they considered it a failure because it was pink. Music giggled as she unfroze time, and Vegapunk returned to his seat and began to list what he would need for what he was about to attempt. But it was a failure. It wasn't the right color. But that was the only thing wrong with it. Everything else, from the power of it to the separate forms, all of it was the same as the original. Color is the one thing that can't truly affect the melody of something, it just gives it a different vibe. Vegapunk rubbed his chin and thought, a difference in color doesn't mean a failure. Thank you, me from the old timeline. If you hadn't imparted that knowledge to the embodiment before sending them back, I may not have been able to undo the damage the smile fruits cause. Music looked over the list Vegapunk was creating. Seems you've already begun to learn from me. Good. Garp sat in his cabin, book stored away, as he stared out the window. He opened one of the drawers and took out a cigar, cut off the tip, then with a match lit it. He took 2 puffs of it before he heard a knock on the door. Come in. Kuma opened the door and stepped in. Garp had asked for the rooms to be able to let large people in if need be when Tom first built the ship, and took a seat on Garp's bed. I didn't realize you smoke. Not often. Garp opened the window that blew the smoke out of it before putting the cigar out and away into the box he had taken it out from. Just when I'm extremely addled, I guess is the word. I've gone years without smoking one. It's not something I intend to ever make a habit, but sometimes I need something to calm my nerves. What did you want to talk about? Kuma shifted slightly. Thank you for saving my people and for saving my daughter. I know fighting Sengoku dash. Garp held up his hand. You're part of this crew. I'd do it again, no question of it. Besides, Sengoku and I would have come to blows eventually. That fight was unavoidable. Garp scratched the back of his head. Kuma stayed silent for a moment. Did you recognize me when dash? Yup. Garp confirmed Kuma's question before he could even finish it. Ginny would have loved to meet you, Kuma said as he took his hat off and gripped it tight. Some years ago she was captured and made into a slave again by a celestial dragon for 2 years until she contracted a fatal disease and was tossed aside. Garp stared at Kuma for a second. Bonnie isn't your child by blood, is she? No. I found Ginny dead with Bonnie, just an infant, near her. She has the same disease, but I've stayed it off for a few decades with my devil fruit. I love her with all my heart, no matter what anyone says. She is my daughter, Kuma spoke firmly. Garp chuckled. I wasn't insinuating anything. Family isn't just blood. I got plenty of grandkids who aren't related to me by blood, but that doesn't change a damn thing about how I feel about them. Kuma smiled at Garp. Thank you. Back to what I was saying, Ginny was given to a few celestial dragons during her time with them. Kuma gripped his hat tightly as he talked. And we believe the disease that Ginny contracted and that Bonnie has. Dragon was not at the Goa Kingdom by pure chance when St. Jalmak was there. Jalmak was one of celestials that had enslaved Ginny. He was able to confirm he wasn't the reason for the disease from the books he was able to salvage from the wreckage. And what he learned is that Ginny was forced to be the wife to a celestial dragon for those 2 years. He passed her around to his friends and Kuma choked on tears as he couldn't say another word. Garp stood up and hugged Kuma. She managed to get in contact with you, didn't she? He could feel Kuma nod into his shoulder as the buccaneer cried. I wish I had accepted her proposal to marry, Kuma said as he cried into his captain's shoulder, neither of them noticing the window pushed further open though no one was outside, and they had just entered the calm belt. Garp hugged Kuma tighter. Just let it out, let it all out. They stayed like that for a few moments before Kuma leaned back. I'm sorry I didn't dash. It's nothing. Garp stopped him before he could say anything. He took off his vest and tossed it in his laundry basket. From what I could tell, you're trying to figure out what disease Bonnie has so you can find a cure. You think the Celestial who forced Ginny to marry him may know? Garp asked, not wanting Kuma to relieve those memories any further. Yes, Bonnie is only 9 right now and we still have plenty of time before the disease can claim her, Kuma said after drying his eyes with a handkerchief. She's only 9 right now, but Dragon has also been searching for a devil fruit that should keep the disease away even longer, the age fruit. If we can find it and give it to her, it will allow her to manipulate her age, thus staying the disease away. Garp pondered what Kuma had shared for a moment. Well, let's add finding the age fruit to our to-do list, and finding that celestial dragon. You got any idea who it was? What family they belonged to? He understood why Kuma hadn't shared it with him until that moment. They hadn't yet earned his full trust like Dragon had. Kuma nodded. Before we left, Dragon informed me that he has a son, although he wasn't able to figure out his name from it. Do you know who St. Charlos is? Garp stared at Kuma for a moment before he began to laugh. It started small before quickly evolving into a loud belly laugh that had Garp holding his stomach. Know him? He's on the top of my shit list. Garp took several deep breaths as he calmed down. I'm sorry, just didn't expect you to mention him. There is a possibility that it was Charlos who owned Ginny. Why do you say that? Kuma asked, somewhat confused after Garp's loud laughter. 'Cause Roseward ain't exactly known to have sex with his slaves like his son is. He's also got a daughter, Shauria, and I know where we could be able to find her outside of Mary Geos. And where she is, her father and brother aren't far behind. Finding out what the disease is just got a whole lot easier. Garp suddenly walked out of the room into the mess hall, with Kuma right behind him. How has it gotten easier? Roseward's family is one of the few that keeps records of their slaves and how they died. To them it's some sort of pride and something that they brag about. He'd learned of them due to their many escapades where they would always take people as slaves, even hearing them brag about it at one of the levelies. Garp went to the blackboard and began to write. If Ginny was one of their slaves, then they'd keep records on her, and that includes the disease she contracted. Roseward doesn't leave Mary Geos without his records, because every trip they take they always come back with slaves. Garp finished writing the 2 new objectives on the board. Reach out to Dragon, tell him what to look for, and if we need to go handle them ourselves then we'll do it. Garp grinned at Kuma. Kuma looked at his captain, stunned by him for a moment before he smiled softly. I can see where Dragon gets his kindness from. But wouldn't they be in Mary Geos? You'd think that, but they are one of the few celestial dragon families that owns a second home outside of Mary Geos, and I know the general area of its location. Garp pointed at the map near the blackboard to a spot near the calm belt of East Blue. They live there most of the time. It's an island they took from the people, and if the news stories about Charlos are any indication, they are still living there despite the crisis. Tell Dragon about it. We'll handle them and get the records ourselves while he works to find the age fruit for Bonnie. Paradise Marine HQ. Tsuru sat in the meeting room of the warlords alone. No one had arrived yet. Soon there's going to be 2 more warlords to fill the empty seats, although I heard he may have chosen 2 candidates who'll hold 1 seat. It's lucky I'm allowed to have final say with the last 2 seats, unlike with Bullet. Suddenly the door opened and Jinbi came in. Ah, Jinbi, a word. Tsuru motioned for him to come over. What do you need, Admiral Tsuru? Jinbi sat in the chair beside her and gave her his full attention. I'll have something to talk with you after this meeting, but there's a pair of individuals who are coming here. Kong has taken over the task of filling the empty warlord positions. We've already replaced Mihawk, but the 2 I'm talking about will share 1 seat. I get final say, but I don't know who they are. Tsuru shook her head. She didn't like that Kong hadn't informed her before extending an offer to become a warlord to whoever he did choose. If I deem them unfit as warlords, I need you to execute them. I have Fujitora on standby in case of that to handle their crew, so you won't have to deal with that. Can you do this? Tsuru looked at Jinbi as he pondered. It will depend on what they have done as pirates. But I can at the very least restrain them. That's enough for me. If you decide to restrain them, then I'll take care of killing them. Tsuru smiled at Jinbi. He was the only one who didn't give her a headache of some sort with the paperwork he created. Hancock walked in next, and Tsuru was surprised at how her appearance had changed. She was more muscular, her hair tied into a long braid, and she had ditched her heels for combat boots. Admiral Tsuru, it is good to see you. I'm glad to see you're not injured from the sorbet incident. Tsuru nodded at her. I see you've been training, it's good to see you taking this crisis so seriously. Hancock elegantly sat down, her pet snake Salome coiling around her chair. I need to be at my peak in order to better keep Amazon Lily safe. I will not be idle and let some upstart defeat me. A good sentiment. I do apologize for the last time we worked together. Jinbi bowed down to Hancock while Tsuru rubbed her forehead out of frustration for remembering that incident. I would have hit that man that tried to grab you either way, but I do apologize for touching you myself. It was not my intention to make you feel uncomfortable. Hancock remembered the incident well. It was before the meeting where she had been given Garp's letter. A nobleman had tried to grab her arm and take her somewhere, saying he'd show her how grateful he was. Jinbi had pulled her behind him and punched the idiot into a wall. She hadn't reacted well to being touched, even if it was in defense of her. No, the fault lies with me. Your Honor would not let you stand by and let someone you had just fought alongside be harassed like that. I just have bad memories of men touching me, but I should not have yelled at you as such. Hancock returned a bowed head of her own to Jinbi. In the future, if you would like to work with me again, let me know. Jinbi gave her a small smile as Don Krieg walked in and took his seat. Before he could talk, Gecko Moria and Doflamingo entered. Foxy entered soon after with Crocodile right behind him. Bullet came stomping in some time later as the rest of the warlords ate the food brought to them and he took his own seat. Tsuru waited for Kong's choices to arrive, and when she saw them in the doorway her eyes widened in rage. Kong had chosen Wet-Haired Caribou and Blood Splatterer Koribu as warlords. Kill them. She ordered Jinbi, who rushed forward, punched a hole through Koribu, and before Caribou could even react manipulated the water from one of the pitchers that had been set out to slice his head off. Tsuru dug out her denden and radioed Fujitora. Sink the Caribou pirates. She told him and then hung up. We will have a talk later, Kong. We may now begin to talk about the sorbet incident and how this will affect your work. What the hell was that? Krieg yelled out as he flinched away from Jinbi, who returned to his seat. Temporary Admiral Kong chose those two to become a new warlord. I decided against it and had Jinbi kill them. Tsuru answered Krieg's question. Like hell will I let those enslaving, murderous monsters gain the immunity of a warlord? Bullet let out a loud laugh. So what are our assignments? Tsuru let out a heavy sigh. We lost 453 ships because of the sorbet incident, but the number has risen to over 600 and is steadily rising due to the holes in patrols from the initial missing ships. The Emperors in New World have been able to consolidate their power further as they eradicated the few patrols we managed to have in their territories, and there are no patrols within South Blue. I can send some ships to patrol South Blue so the Marines can focus elsewhere, Hancock volunteered. I've recently invested in several new ships so I can spare a few. Kazan's idea can work, but I need to set up the foundation. Very well then, we'll use the ships we would have sent there to try and reclaim trade routes in Paradise. Tsuru nodded at Hancock. A further issue for the Marines is the sheer loss we had from the battle on Sorbet and all the ships for the Buster Call being destroyed. Don Krieg, you'll be aiding us in Paradise to reclaim those trade routes. Even with the ships we now have thanks to Boa Hancock, we'll still need further firepower. Fine, the crew's been growing restless so it's no trouble. Krieg crossed his arms and tried to ignore the corpses in the room. Finally, we are still deliberating on bounties for the Constellation crew. Be prepared to receive them soon though. Anyone who was not given an assignment, continue doing what you've been doing. Oh, and Doflamingo? Tsuru stood up and grabbed her gun that had been slung over the back of her chair. Admiral Kong will be coming to Dressrosa soon to perform an inspection. Prepare to have him. Tsuru left the room, kicking Caribou's arm out of her way as she did so with Jinbi right behind her. Reaching her office, Tsuru sat behind her desk and gestured for Jinbi to take a seat. What did you wish to discuss? Do you know what your old crewmate Macro is doing? Jinbi blinked a bit, startled at the sudden mention of his former crewmate. Can't say that I have. We lost contact after the Sun Pirates dissolved. He's been enslaving people. Tsuru bluntly told him. He what? Jinbi stood up in rage, his shout rattling the window behind Tsuru. Tsuru waited for him to sit back down before continuing. Primarily mermaids but also fishmen and humans and the occasional mink. It's only a crew of 3: Macro, Gyro, and Tansway. Tsuru held up a finger for each name. They used to sell to the auction house at Sabaody, but with its destruction they've been selling to clients directly. They dare to do such a thing and still bear the mark of the Sun Pirates? Jinbi's hand clutched into a fist, and he let out an uncharacteristic growl. I recently learned of them. A slight lie, she and Garp had learned about them a few weeks before he disappeared, and then she forgot about them with the crisis that came soon after. She only remembered them during her talk with Garp. I want you to find and arrest them and retrieve their ledgers. I want to know of any allies they've had and who they've been selling to. I will interrogate them myself. They dishonor Fisher Tiger and the Sun Pirates. Jinbe nodded at Tsuru and stood up. Thank you for informing me, Admiral Tsuru. I will see them stopped. Good. Oh, one moment. Tsuru stopped Jinbe before he left. A recent law Sengoku got introduced at the level he was passed. Once sufficient evidence is found of criminals enslaving others, they may be executed immediately. If you feel the need to take them to Fishman Island to have them tried for their crimes, or they just happen to disappear after you find their ledgers, no questions will be asked. Jinbe nodded at Tsuru. Thank you for informing me of this law. He gave her a wide grin that almost bordered on feral before he left her office. Gran Tesoro Paradise. Jesus Burgess, the self-proclaimed champion, walked the streets of Gran Tesoro, looking for a place to get some work. Gran Tesoro, like many things, wouldn't have been possible without the crisis that still grips the world. Gil Tesoro had been able to make the Casino Island ship possible thanks to the massive amounts of work he got smuggling things to various kingdoms that had lost control of their trade routes. What might have taken him longer to achieve, he was able to do it in a year and a half thanks to the crisis. Jesus had come here hoping to find a job as security, or anything really. He was starting to feel desperate. His home island had banished him for his violent tendencies, and he hadn't been able to find a crew that was willing to let him join since then. So, when he managed to spot the island ship, he took his chance to find a new place to work and came aboard it. Unfortunately, he hadn't had any luck finding any place that was looking for help. Hey, big guy. When suddenly a voice yelled out from one of the alleyways. Jesus turned around to saw a pale woman in a suit waving him over. You looking for work? Jesus almost let out a sigh of relief. Yeah. He walked into the alleyway with the strange woman. So what do you need? Suddenly the woman disappeared from in front of him and a buster sword was piercing its way through his chest from his back. I need you to die. Can you do that, or are you such a giant idiot that you can't even do that? I mean seriously, who walks into a dark alleyway without any sort of caution? Death kicked him off her sword and then swiftly decapitated him. First of the three crossed off the list. Now I need to figure out where Van Augur is. Death returned her buster sword to its ring form and walked out of the alleyway, only to see Sky sitting near one of the fountains. Hey Sky, what are you doing here? Can we talk? Not as our titles but as us. Sky spoke with a low voice, clearly not feeling like having a regular conversation. Death pursed her lips. Yeah, come on, I know a place here we can talk in private, unless you want to talk up there? No, down here is good, let's go. Sky stood up and followed behind Death to a small restaurant where they sat at one of the more hidden tables. Death gave the waiter some belly. We want to have a private talk, please grant us this luxury. The waiter bowed and left, taking the money. Once Death was certain the waiter was out of earshot, she opened her mouth, revealing two piercings on her tongue, and took one of them off, transforming it into a jewel-encrusted skull and placing it on the table between them. Its emerald eyes began to glow, and an invisible field surrounded the two gods and their table. No one will hear this conversation. For this conversation I will no longer talk as Death but as my former self, Persephone, goddess of agriculture and vegetation, spring, and the queen of the Greek underworld. As she spoke, her clothes changed into a toga, her short black turning into long blonde hair that was quickly tied into a complex braid. She had a laurel keeping her now tied hair up, and her purple eyes changed to green. Finally, her pale skin turned to a beautiful tan. For this conversation I will no longer talk as Sky but as my former self, Heimdall, god of foresight, surveillance, order, and foreknowledge, the bearer of Gyllerhorn and herald of Ragnarok. Thank you for having this conversation with me. As he spoke, his loose clothes changed to armor and he grew a pure white, braided beard. He grew in height as his lean build filled up considerably. His eyes became misty and most would think he was blind, but he could see better than anyone. Now what's wrong? Persephone hated being in her old form. It reminded her of her husband and what happened to him. How her home with him was destroyed by power-hungry gods, and the people she knew and cherished there were torn apart by gods who thirsted for more power than what they had been granted in their immortal life. She wanted to get this conversation over with as soon as possible and return to being Death. She may have been able to move on from it all, but it didn't mean she had to remember it all. The way we are bending and ignoring the rules we imposed on ourselves, I'm worried we will begin to act like the other gods. You just killed a mortal without the backing of a wish or anything, and music is teaching Vegapunk how to create real devil fruits. Heimdall spoke his concerns. Unlike the other gods, he was comfortable being in his old form. The others from the Norse pantheon got to go out and battle while he continued to watch for Ragnarok, although now he worked to prevent it. I know we are trying to avoid the events that ended the world in the old timeline, but what happens when we begin to ignore our rules? How long until we become like those gods who killed our friends and family? Persephone glared at Heimdall. That's what you're worried about? Heimdall, we imbued those rules onto our very souls to prevent us from overstepping them. But we are able to circumvent them while aiding an embodiment of a wish. Luffy's wish was for things to be different, not to save the world from Ragnarok. Heimdall immediately countered. That may be, but we are still bound by several of the rules. If we weren't, we'd be the ones doing all of these tasks and sending the world into chaos. The difference, though, between the chaos that Garp is causing and the chaos we'd cause by our direct interference is that we could very well start Ragnarok. Persephone shot right back. Heimdall gripped his hand in a fist and slammed it on the table, although none of the waiters noticed thanks to the powers of the emeralds in the skull Persephone used. But that is the only rule we can't circumvent while helping an embodiment, direct interference, and ensuring the wish comes true. But doing something like ensuring the Blackbeard crew can never come to be by killing all of them behind the scenes doesn't break that rule, since it was Teach himself that brought them together and Garp already plans to kill him. You could have found some way to do it indirectly, but instead you did it yourself, taking advantage of a loophole in the rule. And music teaching Vegapunk how to make devil fruits takes advantage of the very same loophole. I will not allow you or them to become like those blasted gods who tore our homes apart. Heimdall heaved a heavy breath as he finished, glaring right back at Persephone. We placed that loophole in on purpose, or is your omniscience of the goings-on of everything the sky can see causing you to lose your memory? Persephone crossed her arms and leaned back, shifting some of the plants that wrapped around her shoulders like a scarf. We put that loophole in place in case we ever used an embodiment to help prevent Ragnarok. Just because we are also trying to ensure that Luffy will be able to reach his ascension back to godhood like he would have in the old timeline. If not for Sakazuki stealing his smile, doesn't mean we are turning out like the old gods. You saw it when the embodiment showed us the old timeline. Oloran, Sun, Nika, Joyboy, Luffy was on the cusp of regaining the memories of his past lives and ascending back to the heavens. His entire crew and so many of his friends, spouses, and even Sabo and Ace were close to ascending back to us. But because of Sakazuki they didn't, and because of him and Blackbeard and Emu and those blasted celestial dragons they didn't, and they brought about Ragnarok. But if we are not careful with how we go about handling things, we could bring it about, and in a way we cannot undo, like the old timeline us did. Abusing the loophole, meddling in mortal affairs directly as you and music are doing right now, and Shaker's request to Garp. When I asked you to handle Jesus, Augur, and Q, I didn't mean to abuse the loophole. I've only killed one of them. Why do you think I'm abusing it? Because you immediately decided to use it instead of creating a series of events that would lead to his death. I didn't complain about you requesting Garp to kill Kong or the use of the Gorgon to convince Hancock, because you weren't abusing the loophole and Garp would then owe you a favor for the help he requested of you and the Great Serpent. But this. That is why I think you are abusing it, because you didn't even try to go for any other method and just jumped right to killing him yourself. Heimdall pointed an accusatory finger at Persephone and glared harshly at her. Do you know how hard it was to set up Lafitte's death? Persephone yelled at him, stopping herself from standing up and breaking the spell the skull had going, making sure instead of exile like in the old timeline he was arrested and sent to Impel Down, and would arrive there on the same day that Tsuru was performing the executions. Do you know the amount of shit I had to do to make sure it all went off without a hitch? I needed to reveal myself to the 5 elders, show off the kind of power and knowledge that I had, just to instill enough fear in them that they would listen to Tsuru's argument for the executions. Fools like them who now possess fear of something that holds more power than Emu. If I didn't do things right, it could have been way worse. We're lucky they only made Bullet a warlord and didn't try and recruit any of the others. I looked into the future with the permission of everyone including you. Persephone pointed her own finger at Heimdall, and I saw that if Lafitte was not killed the moment he entered Impel Down, he would escape. There was a high chance, if nothing else changed, he would have been able to escape and join the Whitebeard pirates, working under Teach, and they would defect from them the moment Teach got the dark fruit, and Lafitte would have been able to help him get through the storm. The breakout he would have caused when escaping would have let so many more criminals out than when Blackbeard did the same in the old timeline, and the crew members he got from there would have joined up with him and eventually Teach. After seeing what just one of them would be able to do if given the chance, then I'm not going to let the others have it. Persephone stopped talking for a moment and just breathed. Heimdall, I understand your concerns, but if you begin to accuse any of us who used the loophole right away, then we will become divided, and that is part of the reason why the War of the Divine happened. You saw what happened in the old timeline, the people and events responsible for it. Why are you fighting against us preventing that? Preventing Ragnarok. I don't want any of us to end up like Odin. Heimdall looked down at the table while Persephone scared at the mention of the god who murdered her husband with help from her mother. His downfall into what he became started when he used a single loophole, and he kept finding more and more until he learned that by killing a god, he gained their power and domains. I don't want to see it happen again, I can't. He would have killed me if it weren't for Aloran. You think I don't want Sun to come back? The rest of the Norse pantheon was able to die in battle, but not in Ragnarok as if had been prophesied. No, it was against Odin, the All-Father. The one who was supposed to lead them into Ragnarok was the one who killed them in the end. Not even those meant to survive lived. In the end it took all of us and Jormungandr to kill him. Even with his death, the things he did, the fusing of all realms of all the pantheons, putting Fenrir, Skoll, and Hati into eternal slumbers, all the gods he killed, even in his final moments he managed to put Jormungandr into an eternal slumber. We were lucky so much of his power had already been drained, else he would have killed us all and healed himself with the power he gained from that. Heimdall wiped at his eyes as he began to shed tears. I can't see that happen again, I can't. Persephone looked at Heimdall in sympathy. It won't. If you like, you can observe my killings of Van Augur and Doc Q, and I'm certain music wouldn't object to some rules being placed on them while they help Vegapunk create new devil fruits. But you need to actually bring these fears up to us, else we become divided in a way only you can understand how it happened and can fix, while the rest of us are stuck scrambling to find out what went wrong. Quoting war to me? Fuck, I might be a bigger mess than I thought. Heimdall laughed slightly as he held his head in his hands. Unlike the others, he'd never had a chance to truly grieve the friends and family he lost in the War of the Divine. He'd had to be on the watch for Ragnarok. With no prophecy to guide him in what to look for, even as Sky, he still found himself jumping at unexpected things he wasn't able to see coming. After we're done ensuring Ragnarok won't happen, you're going on vacation. Persephone smiled at him and placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. She picked up the skull and its powers ceased to be active, and they returned to their true forms as Sky and Death. She called over a waiter as she turned the skull back into a piercing and placed it next to its partner on her tongue. We'd like to order now. Hancock lounged on her captain's chair as Perfume Udas sailed through paradise, heading back for Amazon Lily. While the meeting had been brief, it had allowed her the ability to begin laying the foundations for ascension to becoming an emperor of the sea. And she already had an idea on how to make contact with someone with influence within the South Blue, since Sarah's and Sandersonia were on one of the most influential islands within the Blue, and Sarah's was on good terms with the people of Smith 18. If Sandersonia is able to make connections with them too, it should make it easier for me to make contact with them. Although if I'm remembering correctly, Rindo has an interest in firearms, so she may be able to make better connections with them. I'll need to see if I can get in contact with them before they have to leave the island. They don't have a den with them, maybe Garp knows a way. Hancock thought to herself while she pet Salome. How long until we make it back to Amazon Lily? A few days, Empress, but that doesn't factor in weather and any pirates we may run into, so it could be longer. One of her Kuja immediately responded. Hancock remembered Kazan saying something similar once when talking with Alvia about his bike trips across the sea. Within the Grand Line you can't truly predict what the weather will be like, or if you'll run into pirates or not. So always be ready for your trips to longer than expected and pack as such, but hope that it will be relatively peaceful. It seems he's given a few lessons on navigation, good. Although I still don't understand how you bike across the sea, that crew, they're all insane. But I'm grateful for them. Perhaps to become an emperor you need to be a little bit insane. Hancock gave a small smile and nodded at her Kuja. Thank you, you may return to your duties. The Great Serpent told me that our fate in the old timeline has been avoided thanks to Garp's actions and his training, but I must do more to make absolutely certain that it does not happen. I will need to claim territories with Paradise as well. Amazon Lily, the Granting Wish, the Mess Hall. Welp, these are ruined. Garp held the box of cigars that he had opened 2 days ago and threw them away. Still don't plan to learn how to properly store those things. Garp walked up to the announcement system connected to the mess hall and turned it on. Attention crew, it is time for a meeting. Garp knew Kuma would find someone to watch over Bonnie while they held the meeting. He didn't want his daughter to hear anything about her mother. Garp walked into the kitchen and started to make himself a sandwich. As he put it together and started to eat it, his crew slowly came in. Soon they were just waiting for Kuma and Belmir to arrive, and Garp had finished his sandwich. All right, Garp, Belmir said as she walked in with Kuma. What's this about? Initially we had simply planned to make Hancock an emperor and then move on to New World. However, after sorbet I've learned of a few things as well as come to a decision regarding something. Garp said as he walked up next to the blackboard and pointed at the task, find the age fruit. Bonnie has a rare disease contracted from her mother at birth who got it due to a celestial dragon forcing her to be their wife. Kuma says the age fruit should be able to help her hold the disease off while we look for a cure, and to do that we need to find out what it is. Dragon will be looking for the fruit, and so long as everything goes well he'll be the one retrieving it and bringing it to us. Once Bonnie has it and has a good grasp on how to wield it, we can send her somewhere safe while we search for a cure. What's the symptoms? Lami asked as she leaned forward. She taught herself about many diseases while on her search for her devil fruit, in hopes one of them may be able to counteract the amber lead. It causes her to grow these blue gem-like scales on her skin, and if she's exposed to the sun it causes the disease to accelerate. We were able to mitigate that part of it thanks to regular sessions with my fruit, but I don't know what else to do. Kuma answered while Tom patted him on the shoulder. Lami rubbed her chin and thought, it's possible it's either a disease from New World, or an exclusive one to the Celestials. We'll need to know what it is if we want to find a cure though. Which brings me to my next point. Garp regained everyone's attention. Dragon was able to learn something which points us to St. Roseward and his family. They were holding on to Ginny as her official owners, although it's entirely possible they were doing it as a favor to one of the other nobles. They keep ledgers on all of their slaves, a bragging right to them that'll help us out with figuring out what the disease is, because part of what they document is everything that happens to their slaves, including cause of death. They keep a second home somewhere in this area. Garp gestured to the area he had pointed out to Kuma. Dragon is having his people look for it, but will handle getting in and taking it over. Which leads me to my third point. Garp pointed at their objective of stopping buster calls from happening. We're gonna stop the buster calls? Alvia spoke up. How's that going to work out? It's a bit complex, Garp answered. The way a buster call works is that they call in 10 battleships commanded by 5 vice admirals. Of course, the number can be increased like we saw at Sorbet, but it will always have at least 10. The thing is though, it's not the ships that make a buster call, it's the ammo. You mean they use special ammo for the buster calls? Alvia leaned forward slightly, keeping mindful of her injuries. I never heard anything about that. How do you know about it? Kazan spoke up. He did trust Garp, but he did previously outrank him back when they were in the Marines. Garp wagged a finger at Kazan. And you forget, Sengoku always complained to me about the goings-on of the Marines he wasn't privy to despite being Fleet Admiral. Plus, as hero of the Marines I heard all sorts of things. The ammo they use is 100 times stronger than any known cannonball, and it's normally just held in storage until they know there's a chance of a buster call being activated, so they prepare ships. They even keep several ships in storage just in case they can't call any ships away from their duties, although during this crisis they've had to use those ships, and from what I've been able to read in the paper they've used the ammo as well against large pirate fleets so they could be able to take them out faster. But what does that do for us? Tom asked as he sharpened his harpoon. If they've been having to use the ammo without activating a buster call, that means the security they've been using has become somewhat lax, meaning there would be holes in it that we could use to get information that would lead us right to where they're storing the ammo. Bogard snapped his fingers in victory as he figured out what Garp was thinking. That's the first and last step, Garp said, confusing everyone. Where they keep the ammo stores isn't the same place as where they make the ammo. Sengoku was never informed of where the factory was, most likely because he wanted to abolish the buster call protocol. We can destroy the storage for the ammo and everything that's inside, but they'll just make a new storage and up security. We need to destroy the factory first and inform the army of how they hid its location in the first place, so if they try to rebuild it, they can be stopped before they can even begin. It'll need to be a joint attack with the army. They destroy the supply depot while we destroy the factory. We do that, it may not stop the buster call protocol, but it will make it much harder for the Marines to actually be able to carry them out without the ammo that made it so easy for them. From there, we throw any golden or silver snail we find into the sea or a volcano, anywhere that the Marines wouldn't be able to get them. Those snails are already rare as is, let's make them ever harder to come by. I'm down for it, Belmir agreed with Garp. So how are we gonna start looking? While Dragon and the army search for St. Rosward's second home and the age fruit, we'll be going after marine bases large enough that battleships are able to dock there in areas that pirate fleets have been causing trouble. So far they've only been using the ammo against large fleets, but that makes it pretty easy for us to find outposts that might have something that'll lead us to our goal. Not defending the Marines or anything, Guillaume's voice pierced through everyone's agreement, and I do agree with the plan, but some of those outposts are most likely defending innocent people. We can't just destroy all of them and leave people defenseless. It defeats our point. Good point, which is why we're gonna teach Alvia how to sneak through a marine base. What? Both Alvia and Kuzan screamed out at the same time. Have you gone insane? Alvia is able to naturally hide from observation hockey. No one is able to detect her intent or presence. If she knows how to sneak around, she could easily get into a base and take notes about anything involving the ammo. Garp responded, although Kuzan had grabbed him by his shirt and was pulling him up to eye level. Do you not see her injuries? She needs time to rest and get better, not more training? I didn't say we'd do it right away. We'll go after outposts that if they get destroyed won't put people in danger. Once Alvia is better, we can start training her, and we'll be on standby in case something goes wrong and rush in to save her. Garp assured Kuzan, although he was surprised he was so protective over Alvia, and he wasn't certain it just because she was a survivor of O'Hara. We still need to help Hancock train and prepare to become an emperor, and I don't want to start this without Sarah's. With her eyesight she'll be able to better keep an eye on the outposts and give her cover fire. Kuzan backed away from Garp, surprised himself at his own actions. Right, sorry, don't know what came over me. When was the last time you slept? Bogart asked as he rested a hand on his friend's shoulder. Those are our current objectives. I'm almost certain we'll find another thing to do before we have to head out for New World. Garp gave his crew a wide smile and a laugh. If we gotta torture information out of those celestial dragons, I call dibs. Lamy suddenly said. On an island near Reverse Mountain. Van Augur, a marksman with no equal, at least that's what he might say, was currently on the hunt for a member of the Revolutionary Army. Since the crisis had started, Augur saw an opportunity to make his mark on the world and took up work as an assassin for hire. After Vinsmoke Judge's death alongside his entire army, a lot of people had lost their usual hires, so for assassins and mercenaries business was good. He'd been hired by a pale woman to kill this member of the army. Augur didn't ask why, he just did what he was hired to do. His fame was starting to grow as he completed more jobs, to the point that he knew he would get a bounty soon. But he wasn't afraid, he knew he could take on anyone who came after him. Perhaps I'll go to New World, make my mark killing emperors and their crews. He stood on a cliff face overlooking the town he had tracked the army member to. Taking aim with Senriku, he took a single breath and fired, all in a few seconds. With the money from this I can charter a dash. Augur's sentence was cut off as an arrow pierced through his throat. He reached his free hand up to try and grab it, but then several pierced through his torso and one through his uncovered eye. Senriku fell from his hands and the marksman fell off the cliff, dead long before he hit the ground below. Atop the mountain the cliff had been part of Death stood, holding a bow carved from bone in her hands and a quiver hanging from her side. She returned them to their ring form and walked down to the cliff and picked up the rifle. I don't get why you hired him to kill that army member. Sky spoke up from behind her as he walked up to the edge of the cliff to look below at Van Augur's remains. You could have just killed him and be done with it. But that army member was a traitor, and he's supposed to be on another island right now, Death said as she examined Senriku, and given he's not where he's supposed to be, the army will have to investigate, but everyone nearby is busy except for one. Dragon, Sky spoke softly as he gazed back at the town, and there's a way to get to the age fruit here. Yup, since Dragon is the only one not busy, he'll be the one to investigate, uncovering the traitor and also finding his first major lead to the age fruit and accelerating his search for it so that it only takes a week now instead of the months it would have taken originally. Death grabbed Sky's shoulder and they suddenly teleported into an alleyway. She held a finger up to her lips and walked out and up to a man looking through some firearms a store was displaying in their window. Excuse me sir, would you like to buy this rifle? It's just taking up space at home and don't use it all that much. How much does it cost? How much does a regular meal cost over there? Death pointed over at a restaurant. You give the money for 2 meals at that restaurant and the rifle is yours. The man gave her the money and then quickly left. Sky walked up beside Death and watched the receding form, holding the rifle tenderly. Why did you just sell Senriku to Yasop? He's looking to buy a goodbye present for Usopp. I made sure to check, and whilst he's trained Usopp in how to handle a rifle, he hasn't gotten him one until today. Now how's about we go eat? Death grabbed Sky by the arm and pulled him towards the restaurant ready to eat. New World Egghead. Keep the flow steady, music instructed Vegapunk as power emanated from his hands into an object floating between them. She hovered her hands over his to help guide him, but she did not add her own power. Listen for the melody, listen for when it's on key. Vegapunk let out a grunt of exertion as he strained his hearing. The melody he heard, it reminded him of forests, mountains, deserts, grasslands, of eating meat, of hunting for something, but it sounded like it was missing something. What is missing? What final part is needed to bring the melody on key? Vegapunk focused, and it was as though the fruit told him what it needed. Feel outcast. With those final words the melody was completed and Vegapunk brought his hands together, but they did not meet. Instead, he held an almost heart-shaped fruit with cat ears. It was white with black spots decorating it, and even the stem was black. "Is this?" "You learned quickly," Music said as she gently took the fruit from his hands to examine it. "You made the artificial version within a day, and then you quickly gained a grasp on the basics for the magic I use when making them. And you remembered the defining difference between the normal leopard and its albino version. The feeling of being outcast, left behind. Then does that mean?" Vegapunk looked at him hopefully. Music tossed the fruit back to Vegapunk. "Congratulations, you just made the cat fruit model albino leopard. And I now know how many smile fruits a new devil fruit model will counter." Music gave Vegapunk a wide smile. 25. "Does that mean you'll leave once we make enough devil fruits to counter all of the smiles?" Vegapunk asked. "Not yet, besides," Music jutted out her hip and rested her hand against it. "I promise to teach you how to make every single type of devil fruit, and you have yet to master how to make normal zoans. We'll focus on making albino versions for the rest of the cats, then you can use the evidence that you have figured out how to create devil fruits to secure more funding for Egghead." Music patted Vegapunk on the top of his head. "Let's keep this one though. What should we do if Saturn asks for a demonstration?" Vegapunk looked at the devil fruit he had created in awe, and then he directed that same awe to Music. "As you figure out how to master the magic of creating devil fruits, I'm certain you'll find a way to create some technology to help you. We can use that to trick him." Music assured him as she returned to her mouse form, scampered up Vegapunk's leg and to his shoulder. "While we're working on that though, I'll teach you how to feed Paramecias and Logias to weapons to stave them off." "I would be honored to learn. I'll need to accelerate my research into making the satellites. With extra hands from people who know about music, I can create more devil fruits." Dragon snuck into the morgue of the Marine base on the island. Going over to one of the tables, he took the cover off, revealing a man with a hole perfectly in his head. Stretching his observation hockey out, he didn't sense anyone, and he dug his personal den out and called the nearest commander. "This is Commander Bello." Betty answering. "What's wrong?" "Betty, it's Dragon. I was checking in on the rumor that one of our own was killed. It's Holst." "Holst is dead?" "I just sent him off on a mission to the Grand Line." Betty sounded regretful about the loss of one of her men. "He's been with the army since the branches were formed." "Yeah, but he died on Quad Peak Island, not Ruin Island where his mission is supposed to be happening." "Were there any reports of him being sent off course or his ship taking damage?" Dragon asked as began to dig through the files to see what else he could find regarding Holst. "None, and even if Quad Peak and Ruin are close to each other, it's next to impossible to confuse them with each other. One has 4 mountains and the other is an island that was a former archipelago." Betty was confused. It wasn't like Holst to make a mistake like this. "Do you think he was running from whoever killed him?" Dragon opened a file and gave it a quick once-over. From the report the Marines gave on his death, he was killed by the assassin Van Auger, who was found riddled with arrows near the bottom of one of the mountains, killed atop the cliff, and his rifle nowhere to be found. Someone took a hit out on Holst, but witnesses say that Holst was acting very calm. There was no hint he was aware that he was in danger. He was actually flirting with someone when he was killed. He didn't report anything regarding the mission? Nothing, he only just got it. Dragon, what are you getting at? Betty questioned him. Dragon took out a book from his pocket and a pen and began to write down everything of importance from the file. He didn't report in about anything regarding the mission. He went to the wrong island, and now he's dead from an assassin who it is theorized was killed right after he killed Holst. All of this reeks of something, but I can't figure it out. I need to go check on his belongings. I'll call you once I'm clear. While you're waiting, look up Holst's career within the army, everything he's done for us, what operations he's worked on, and what partners he's had in the past. Dragon hung up and put away the file and pulled the cover back over Holst's body, returning the room back to how it was when he entered. Sneaking back out of the morgue, he clung to the shadows as he made his way for the evidence room, avoiding what few Marines were here on the night shift. Holst was always good about reporting in when he arrived at location. Hell, he reported everything. Was he planning to investigate the Marines here because Ruin sometimes sent their prisoners here? But then why didn't he report that in? I'll need to see if his den was damaged. Dragon jumped up and stretched his limbs out to catch himself on the walls and hold himself above 2 Marines who walked below him. Once he was certain they were gone, he fell back to the floor as softly as he could and walked into the evidence room. What is the difference between this island and Ruin beyond the obvious? Looking over the organized shelves, he saw the belongings of some local criminals, a few bandits, and plenty of pirates. Walking to the back, he found a shelf labeled Holst, Revolutionary Army. Dragon picked up Holst's assigned den and looked it over. It's not damaged, drugged, or starting to die. It's in perfect health, so why didn't he use it? Dragon put the den in his pocket and looked over what else they had taken off of Holst's body. Money, a pen, the dock where they're holding his ship. I'll need to check that out. Where's his journal? Holst was known to always carry a journal with him, and he was very protective of what he wrote down in it, not letting anyone see what was within and just saying he was writing about his feelings regarding things. There might be some important information within it, gotta find it. I should check the Commodore's office. Dragon grabbed all of Holst's belongings and snuck out of the evidence room and quickly made his way to the nearby Commodore's office. The Commodore was currently out, but Dragon didn't know if he would come in to do some late-night work. He looked through the filing cabinets atop the desk and then began to look through the drawers of the desk. On the fourth drawer he found Holst's journal. Dragon opened it to the first few pages and his blood ran cold. He realized what the difference between Quad Peak and Ruin was, at least the important one to Holst. The Marine outpost on Quad Peak Island had a communication room that could reach Marine HQ, while Ruin only had one that could reach out to the outposts in the general area. Within the journal was a list of information about Army operations, the identities of members and their usual locations, and the locations of Army outposts. Next to each one was a price, and next to each price was an indication of if Holst had managed to sell that information or if it had become outdated. He betrayed us. Sold out our cause for money? Dragon had to hold himself back from yelling out in anger. So many of his people dead because of Holst, so much of their work undone, so many people still held under tyrants because Holst sold out their operations. Dragon put the book into one of his cloak's pockets and opened one of the windows in the Commodore's office and stepped out onto the ledge. Closing the window behind him, he looked out over the docks of the Marine outpost where they kept ships they impounded. He could see Holst's ship, the Revolutionary Army's flag still hanging from it. Holst went through several journals, and given how much money he was making from selling us out, he must have kept the others in case someone asked about something older. He may have even kept a ledger on his clients so he knew who to call when he had something. Dragon climbed down from where he was hanging and hid behind some barrels as a few Marines walked past. Sneaking through the docks, he hid himself away several times, but he always listened in to any conversations the Marines were having, just in case they were talking about Holst. As he made his way into the area where they were holding the ship, he overheard a Marine say something. So why is Commodore Hurst tearing apart the inside of this ship? It's like he's obsessed. Apparently the revolutionary was his brother or something and they were meeting up. Maybe the guy was planning to turn traitor and side with the Marines? The other Marine shrugged her shoulders as they stood guard at the gangplank. Maybe he's looking for information, or maybe it's some family heirloom, who knows. Dragon rushed up to the two Marines, and before they could yell out, he grabbed their heads and slammed them against each other, knocking them both out. Let's find out what Commodore Hurst's relationship with Holst is. Dragon walked aboard the ship and went below deck, mindful of where he stepped so he didn't alert the Commodore. Where is it? Where is it? Dragon heard the Commodore repeat those words over and over as he dug through everything in the ship. Dragon unsheathed the knife he kept at his hip and grabbed Hurst and slammed him against the wall, holding the knife to his throat. What is your relation to Holst? Dragon? Why are you here? Hurst yelped out. Dragon forced the blade against Hurst's throat, drawing some blood, and glared the Commodore down. All right, I was one of Holst's clients. He was coming to sell some stuff to me when he was killed. How much information have you sent out since his death? Nothing. I need proof to be able to actually report anything, and Holst would always give it to me once I bought something. I'm on my way to becoming a rear admiral thanks to him. I was just trying to find it. Dragon looked Commodore Hurst up and down. Why were people saying Holst was your brother? It was the only way I could get aboard without people questioning me. If they found out that all of my achievements weren't by my own merit and that I'd been lying, I could get demoted. We look similar enough it was believable. What more do you want? Nothing. Dragon slit Hurst's throat and threw him to the side. He fished his personal den out and called Betty. Dragon, what's going on? Holst was a traitor. He's been selling information about our operations, undercover agents, and what devil fruit some of us have eaten. I just killed one of his clients on his ship. Is there any place here where he might have hidden his books? Dragon got straight to the point as he began to shift through everything. Holst was a traitor? Betty asked in disbelief. Check his room under his bed. Dragon went to Holst's room and lifted the bed with ease and moved it aside. He saw some floorboards that seemed to be raised slightly more than the others, and he felt along them until he found an edge. He gripped it and lifted it up, finding several chests within and a few bags. Lifting them up, he took them back into the main room and opened each of them. How'd you know? Back when Holst and I were of the same rank, we had a few flings together. I noticed once during one of them that the floor under his bed looked weird. Never thought about it again until now. Dragon opened each of the chests, and within each were Holt's treasures, dozens of books, each no doubt filled to the brim with information about the army. Where was Holt's first stationed? East Blue. Why? Betty suddenly realized what Dragon was thinking. You don't think? Dragon grabbed the oldest book and opened it to the first page. He had to establish himself as reputable, someone who could get reliable information. What better way to do that than selling out the location for one of army commanders? Dragon resisted the urge to rip the book in half as he felt his anger rise. He sold out Ginny to the world government and got her enslaved again. And his price for that? 5,000 bellies. That son of a bitch. Betty yelled out, and Dragon could hear her throw something. I'll be coming with everything I found. Be ready to set up a hit list against his clients and to apprehend any accomplices he may have had. He was meticulous in his records. He would keep track of who he could trust somewhere among these books. Dragon hung up and quickly made a makeshift sack with Holt's bed sheets. Slinging it over his shoulder and slammed a oil lantern against the ground and quickly made his escape as the boat was set aflame. The next day, Dragon punched a hole through a wall as Ivankov and Betty pored over the books. Dragon currently didn't know who he could trust within the army out of a select few, so he was limiting this investigation to him and the commanders. Ivankov had been the first person he had called since Kuma currently had to care for Bonnie. The others were on their way to the outpost they were stationed at. You're telling me Admiral Kong hired Holtz to stop any transmissions from our people within the South Blue while the rebels were fighting, preventing us from joining up with them, and stopped any distress calls once Admiral Kong began to destroy the rebels. And he hired him even before Kong was made a temporary admiral. And he had someone keep Lindbergh busy on that mission I sent him on for months, causing hundreds to be killed. Ivankov was checking the older ledgers while Betty was checking the newer ones. Unfortunately, Betty sighed and rubbed her forehead, I've already informed Lindbergh and he's taking a detour to apprehend and interrogate the traitor. And Kong was the same person that Holtz sold Ginny out to so he could mark himself as a reliable source of information. Ivankov nodded gravely. Kong was Holtz's most common client, especially when he was first starting out. How many clients did he have? Betty put her current ledger down and looked over the shared list that she and Ivankov were putting together. Dozens, maybe a little over 100. Still putting together how much money he made from all his sales and what he did with it. Ivankov raised a second list. We've also found a few traitors already. Morley, Karasu, and Inazuma are going after them as we speak. We're looking for any sign of members that Holtz couldn't trust and why. The man did keep a ledger on who he could and couldn't trust within the army regarding his business. I just know it, but I do believe we can trust all of our deputy commanders. Then bring them up to speed and have them hunt down the traitors. I want to know if there were any others who took up Holtz's business. Somewhere within paradise on the open sea, an odd-looking paddle ship drifted through the sea, and on the small open area at the front sat Macro, the captain of the Macro pirates. Wonder why Jinbe wanted to meet up, and where is he? We've been waiting here for hours. Why is he late? Macro yelled out as he stood up from his seat. Hello Macro, sorry for being late. Macro nearly jumped out his skin as he whirled around and saw Jinbe standing right behind him. What the hell are you doing sneaking up on me like that? Macro yelled at Jinbe, but it's good to see ya, how's it been being a warlord? He gave his old friend a wide smile and patted him on the back, but he noticed that Jinbe's hands were slick with blood. Did he get caught up in a fight? It's work that's helped people see past their prejudices of our kind, Jinbe said as stepped past Macro and looked out over the open sea. I've met some horrible humans, but I've also met some truly amazing ones, and not once has there been a moment where I could call it dull. The admiral in charge of the warlords also wants better rights not just for fishmen and mermaids, but minks and giants, all races. Part of how she's doing that is trying to make slavery completely illegal for everyone, no matter what social standing they have. It's not an easy one, but she tries. So imagine my surprise when I was given an assignment to hunt down some slavers, and you were their captain. Macro's eyes widened and he stepped back. What are you talking about? I've already seen your ledgers, don't try to lie to me, Jinbe growled out as he turned around. The glare he gave Macro nearly made the fisherman soil himself. How dare you keep the mark of the Sun Pirates while you enslave your own people? You know what happened to Fisher Tiger, to Koala because they were enslaved? And you would subject others to that hell? Jinbe stepped forward and Macro became intimately aware of how much bigger Jinbe was compared to him. Don't call for the others, they're already dead. What? Macro yelped out as he fell down and began to crawl away from Jinbe. I've been here the entire time, I killed them and dumped their bodies into the ocean hours ago. I've been reading your ledgers, your journals, everything, trying to understand why you became slavers. Jimber looked at Macro with absolute disgust, and it was just because of the money. Macro was only able to let out the beginning of a scream before Jinbe leapt forward and sliced off the top part of his head and cut his throat open. Jinbe then threw the still warm corpse into the sea and began to guide the ship to Water 7. I will see all of your clients face justice. I will free all that you enslaved, and I will redeem the symbol of the Sun Pirates. My next step will be to see your ship torn apart and used for scrap. Back with Dragon. Dragon was tempted to drink something strong. They had found at least 10 traders who helped Holst with his business for a cut of the profit from the cells they helped him with. Their hit list for his clients was also growing steadily, and they were learning why some of their operations failed or how some of their agents were captured or killed. So many things that went wrong for the army that linked back to Holst and his business. Please tell me there's some good news out this mess? When Betty and Ivankov were unable to give him some, Dragon dragged his hands down his face. I'm going to head back to Quad Peak, see if there's anything I missed. Given that Hearst had torn apart the ship, I'm certain he found something that he hid off of it. There were a few secret compartments already open by the time I got there. We'll handle going through the rest of the books here, Ivankov said. We'll let you know about anyone else we can bring on for the investigation. Do you dash? Let me know how the interrogations go for the traitors. Dragon cut Ivankov off, already feeling a headache coming on at the thought of uncovering more traitors who helped Holst with his business. It was like a secret faction within the Revolutionary Army, and if I'm needed to help apprehend any of them, let Kuma know about this. I know we can trust him. I don't know about that, Betty spoke up before Ivankov could move to call Kuma. I just got to the ledger from the beginning of the crisis, and Bikori hired Holst for information regarding the location Ginny's grave. Betty looked at the pale face of Ivankov and Dragon, resisting the urge to punch another hole in the wall. What was the state of Ginny's grave before Sorbet was destroyed? I checked it once. It was clear that we would have enough time. Kuma was stuck getting his injuries checked out, so he couldn't come, Ivankov admitted. It was desecrated, the soil disturbed, but other graves were like that, so I just thought it was some Marines not caring about the graves, or they were disturbed during the fighting. Do you think they took her body? Why would Bikori want to know where it was? I don't know. I'll see if Bikori bought anything from another trader after this. Betty added Bikori to the hit list. But if Kuma hears word of this, I don't know what he will do. We can't hide it from him, but we can delay telling him. He's currently busy taking care of Bonnie and recovering from his injuries, so we'll put it off until one of those is done, but after that we have to tell him. If any of the people part of this investigation have a chance at Bikori, tell them to capture him so we can question him about why he wanted to know where Ginny's grave was. Dragon didn't like not telling Kuma about Ginny, but he knew how the Buccaneer would react if he learned of this. The next day. Excuse me, ma'am. Dragon got the attention of a woman. I've been asking around and I've been told my friend was talking with you a couple of days ago when he was killed. Did he drop anything that the Marines didn't pick up? Dragon had already checked to see what Hearst had found, and it had just been some of Holt's money, nothing else. I'm so sorry for your loss, the woman said before reaching into her bag. I was actually about to take these to the Marines. They must have fallen out of your friend's pockets when he was shot. I dropped a bunch of stuff when it happened and picked them up by mistake. Please be well. The woman gave Dragon 2 books and went on her way. Dragon ducked into an alleyway and opened the first book. It's a list of his allies and clients. This should help the investigation. Opening the second book, Dragon was confused. This is an open investigation into locating a devil fruit that the army is interested in. He was planning to sell it to the Marines once he found it. Looking further in, Dragon smirked. The age fruit. While he was here to sell information, he also asked around to see if anyone had heard anything. Flipping to the last used page, Dragon checked what Holst had last added. Seems he found a merchant who had heard something. The age fruit is nearby on Cold Tooth Island. I'll need to get the list to Ivankov and Betty first, but then I can go after the fruit. Dragon slipped the book into one of his pockets and made his way back to his boat, where he was met with a surprise. A teen with orange hair peeking out from under a newsboy cap gave him a salute. Koala reporting for duty, sir. At ease, what are you doing here? Dragon asked as he began to untie the ship from the dock. Commander Ivankov thought it was important that you had an assistant during the course of this investigation. Koala responded immediately, revealing to Dragon that she was one of the members that he could trust because she unknowingly used a code word. Ivankov had helped Dragon in the past when they were investigating the possibility of traitors, and whenever he sent someone to Dragon while one of those investigations was ongoing, there were 3 different words that he would put into the explanation that he gave the recruit to tell Dragon when he asked what they were doing there. If they said comrade, then it meant that Dragon should be slightly suspicious of them, but he could still somewhat trust them. If they said friend, then Dragon couldn't trust them one bit, and there was a high chance they were a traitor. But if they said assistant, it meant Dragon could trust them completely. Ivankov had only ever told Dragon of the code words once when there wasn't anyone else around and he had never written them down. It was next to impossible for anyone to know the code words existed. Did he? Anyway, aren't you normally partnered with Hack? Dragon began to untie the sails as he spoke. We'll be meeting with him over on Ruin Island to give anything that you found so he can deliver it to the commanders. He's helping the replacements for Holst get set up there for the mission. Good to hear. Can you handle steering the ship? I need to call Ivankov. Dragon got his Denden out and dialed Ivankov's number while Koala got work steering the ship. It's Dragon, he said once the call went through. Please tell me you have good news, Ivankov begged, sounding very tired. You were right, Holst kept a book on him with a list of both his clients and accomplices, so it should speed the investigation along nicely. There was another book that he used while he was looking for the age fruit. Do you know how he knew about our search for it? Dragon asked as he took out the investigation book and checked the date for the first entry. It doesn't say how he found out, just that he learned of it. Dragon could faintly hear Betty curse as she came over to join. When did he put in the first entry? Dragon told her the date and Betty let out a slew of curses. Bastard must have read the file I'd been given on the assignment after one of our flings. That's the day after I'd been given it. It was in one of my desk drawers. He must have dug around in it while I was asleep. Betty had been brought on for the search a few months before she was made commander of the East Blue branch of the army, and she had thought her files had been secure in her desk with the lock on it and everything, but they had found that the pens Holst always kept with him had secret compartments within that once all the contents were put together held a full lock-picking kit. I'd started suspecting our flings was how he was able to get some of the information he had, but this confirms it. Did nothing he had within the army mean anything to him? Betty sounded deeply hurt by this further revelation about Holst. If you want to focus on something else, I understand you were close to Holst, you joined up around the same time. I know this has to hurt, Dragon said. He knew it hurt plenty of people within the army. While Holst wasn't highly ranked, he was well known and liked, so to find out that the relationships he had built with so many people, all the good that he had helped with, meant nothing to him other than keeping his cover safe, it hurt. No, I am going to make sure no one remembers him in a good light. Everything he did will be shown for the world to see, Betty yelled out. The next day, Dragon was glad he hadn't brought any alcohol with him because he had just learned of two bad things. Just repeat what you said so I know I'm hearing you right. Koala was a bit perplexed by Dragon's reaction, but then again this investigation was revealing several things that were very concerning. A few of the traitors broke under interrogation and revealed that they were doing a similar business to Holst. We have their records and are currently using them to further the investigation as well as evidence they had accomplices that Holst did not also work with. It is suspected that a secret faction within the army with the express purpose of selling information to whoever asked was built up thanks to Holst recruiting people to help him. Bikori also used the services of a different traitor to find out about Commander Kuma's daughter Bonnie and that she was also Commander Ginny's child, and it is believed he then gave it the world government, resulting in the occupation of Sorbet. It is suspected that Bikori may have been doing the bidding of a celestial dragon, possibly the one who owned Commander Ginny. Commander Ivankov recommends an immediate capture of Bikori. Great, so I didn't mishear you. Dragon stood up and went to the sink in the ship's kitchen. He filled it with water, and once the faucet was turned off he stuck his head in the water and screamed. For about 2 minutes that was all he did. Once he was done, stepped away from the sink and got the hair out of his eyes. Inform Ivankov that if they can find where Bikori currently is, then they may capture him. As for the suspicions of this secret faction, tell them to cease all current non-vital operations and call all agents back that are not aiding in dire circumstances. Given how possibly widespread this faction could be, we can't risk them making things worse for other kingdoms. What should they tell the agents to bring them back? Koala asked. There is evidence of several Cypher Pole agents infiltrating our ranks. Ivankov can figure out the rest from there. Dragon checked the map. We'll be at Cold Tooth Island in the next 5 hours. Make the call, then get some rest, okay? Understood. Koala gave Dragon a small salute. Marine HQ. Sengoku bit into a rice cracker as he looked at the folded-up piece of paper Garp had given him after their fight. Are you going to open it, or is it just going to sit there? Tsuru asked him as she nursed a cup of coffee. What's stopping you? Why give it to me when he won the bet? Sengoku asked. He had heard what Garp said when he gave him the paper, but it wasn't like him to do that when he won a bet. Maybe there's an answer in the stash, go look. Tsuru gave him one of her patented looks and Sengoku caved. Picking it up he read it aloud. Go into my office, turn left twice then right once, look behind what is in front of you. Sengoku blinked at the paper for a moment before sighing, And he doesn't mention where I should be facing. Some things never change. Getting up, he went to Garp's office, untouched and unoccupied since they took all of the papers out of it once Garp had announced his resignation. No one was willing to use it, out of fear or respect or even just hatred, but it hadn't been used by anyone in at least a year. Walking in, Sengoku faced Garp's desk, then turned to his left twice, then right. He saw Garp's shelf where he kept pictures. Most of them had gone missing though, and the dust had been disturbed. Was someone here recently? Haven't heard anything, Tsuru answered as Sengoku moved the shelf, revealing a hole in the wall. Reaching in, he found a bunch of expired rice cracker boxes and a small tube. Taking it out, he popped the top off and took out a piece of paper, and he let out a laugh. What's it say? Sengoku leaned down so he could show it to her. I had 2 stashes. First look at the door, then turn left and you'll find another stash. There will be your clue to my final stash. The asshole had more than one stash. Sengoku let out a loud laugh. I should have expected it from him. He moved the filing cabinet and found another hole in the wall. Reaching in, he took another tube out and opened it up. It says to do what I did to find the first one. What should I do now? Tsuru grabbed both pieces of paper and the one Garp had given Sengoku and grabbed a lantern. Walking over to small display case, she took out all of the metals that were within and put the lantern within and took the top off. Lighting it, she closed the display case and put the 3 pieces of paper over each other. Garp used to do this when we went undercover and couldn't always keep in contact. Close the blinds. Sengoku closed the blinds and looked over Tsuru's shoulders. Invisible ink? Before his eyes, he was seeing lines appear across the stacked pages, lining up with the words. Tsuru moved one of the papers around as she noticed it didn't line up properly with the others, so that's why he said turn left twice. It wasn't just for this map, it was to hint that 2 of the pages lined up with each other facing one way while the other had to face the opposite. How many times did you guys go undercover? Sengoku asked. For Tsuru to know what Garp was doing right away, they had to have used it a lot. It was about a year before God Valley when Garp had to stop going on undercover missions since he was gaining a lot of fame. Before that we did it a lot. I'd play the part of the sharpshooter who was in charge of our little duo and Garp would play the muscle. Tsuru went over to the desk and grabbed a piece of paper and a pen and began to draw the map down that had been revealed from the pages. It worked out pretty well for us. We shut down a lot of organizations thanks to our little act. Tsuru handed the map over to Sengoku while she blew out the lantern. You know where that is? Sengoku squinted at the map for a moment. It's the training area. How did Garp get these pages here? Sengoku suddenly realized that the tubes holding the pages were new. Do you think he got the army to do this? Tsuru shrugged. Probably. It would explain why all those pictures were taken. They quickly walked over to the personal training area where Marines and recruits trained alone outside of missions or classes. Looking around, they didn't see anyone using it, which wasn't a surprise. Nowadays Marines didn't get enough downtime to use it. Sengoku walked over to a bench that overlooked the sea. Garp and I would sit here and eat rice crackers after we finished training. Sengoku looked at the map for a moment before he looked back at the sea. Where could he hide it around here? Tsuru looked under the bench but didn't find anything. I don't know, is there another spot around here that he spent a lot of time around? Sengoku shook his head. No, it doesn't make any sense. Why make that secret map if there wasn't anything around here? Suddenly the clouds parted and the sunlight shined across the sea, casting it in dozens of colors. Oh, that's why he brought us here, he murmured as he took a seat with Tsuru and stared out over the shining sea. No matter how big of an idiot he can be, he certainly knows how to get people to relax, Tsuru said absent-mindedly. Cold Tooth Island. Dragon tied the ship to the dock as Koala paid the docking fare. Excuse me, do you know of any shops that may be selling devil fruits? He asked the dockmaster before she could walk away. It's him? Edwards may have some, but I wouldn't count on him still having them. He's got a bit of a gambling problem. The dockmaster shrugged. He manages to win devil fruits plenty of times, sure, but he can never hold on to them long enough to actually sell them. She began to walk away to another ship that had docked. I swear, that boy needs to get someone who can hold him back from gambling away all those fortunes. Koala, keep an ear out for any mention of someone winning a devil fruit from this Edward. Dragon ordered Koala as they began to walk into town. Understood. What should we do if he's already lost the age fruit? Koala asked as walked alongside him. Find out who he lost it to and track them down. Dragon answered simply as he saw a sign for Edward's Emporium of Oddities. Keep watch for any Marines or pirates. He stationed Koala outside as he walked into the shop. One moment please. I'll be right with you. A voice yelled out from the back. Dragon walked up to the counter and looked at the empty display case behind it. That doesn't look good. Hi, hello. How can I help you? A thin, wiry man came out from the back and leaned against the counter, adjusting a pair of broken glasses that dangled from his nose. "I heard you had the age fruit. How much do you want for it?" Dragon asked right away. The man's small smile fell and he could no longer look Dragon in the eye. Oh, I'm sorry sir, but I don't have it anymore." He wrung his hands as he stepped back from the counter. "Did you sell it?" No, I gambled it away to some pirates." Dragon sighed and dug out Holt's investigation book and flipped it to a blank page. "Could you draw the crew's Jolly Roger?" Edward grabbed a pen and began to draw it. "Do you know where they might have gone?" "Last game I had with them they said they were heading to Sabaody to sell their loot. They'd gotten enough supplies that they wouldn't need to make a stop. They left 2 days ago." "What are you gonna do?" Edward slid the book back over to Dragon and he took it, giving the Jolly Roger a quick glance over. A sideways skull crossed with a sword and trident and the eye being a triangle. "That's none of your business, but thank you for the information. I'd recommend you stop gambling away devil fruits. You're throwing away fortunes," Dragon advised him as he walked out of the shop. "He gambled it away. The crew is heading for Sabaody, but I got the Jolly Roger, so we'll see if anything happened to them." Dragon told Koala as they walked towards a restaurant to get a meal. "I'll call it in, but it'll take a while for them to find anything, so once we eat, we'll get resupplied then head straight for Sabaody." The next day with Jinbi began to guide Macro's ship into a dock at Water 7. He'd made far better time than he had expected, and he was glad for it. He wanted off this ship as soon as possible. He'd already contacted his crew and had the Teo brought here. Stepping off the ship and onto land, he was met with the mayor of Water 7, Icebug. "A pleasure to meet you, Captain Jinbi. I hope your trip wasn't too difficult." Jinbi bowed his head slightly to Icebug. "No, the weather favored me quite well. This is the ship of a crew of slavers. I've brought it here to be taken apart and used however you wish." Icebug observed the strange-looking ship. "I must admit, I've never seen a ship designed quite like this. We currently have a bit of a backlog of ships we need to take apart, but we can take it on." Jinbi saw some of his crew coming over. "Take all of the books off and store them in crates. Admiral Tsuru wants them." They gave him a nod and got to work. Icebug motioned for Jinbi to walk with him. "I'm currently in the works to create a dismantling yard for ships we need to take apart, so the ship should be taken apart soon enough. Would you like an inspection done for your ship while you stay here?" "I would appreciate it. We do our best to take care of her, but the Grand Line isn't kind to ships," Jinbi said as they walked towards Dock 1. "That is an extreme understatement nowadays with the increase in pirates. I need to talk with one of my shipwrights and I need to check in with my secretary with how everything is progressing. I hope it won't be keeping you from anything important." Jinbi shook his head as they entered the dock through a side entrance. "No, I do need to set up proper payment for the dismantling and the inspection." Before Icebug could respond, a pirate yelled out, "Nobody move." He was clearly the captain of a crew given his coat and hat. He had his arm around a woman's throat and a gun to her head. "You're going to fix our ship for free or her brains are going to be painting these ships." The rest of his crew had their weapons out and ready to fight as the rest of the shipwrights of Dock 1 were primed to fight. Icebug stopped Jinbi from running in to fight the pirate crew. They hadn't been noticed by anyone yet, thankfully, since they had used a side entrance. He walked over to nearby wall of sledgehammers and picked up one with a name engraved upon its handle, Cutty Flam. "Move over there so you can protect the dock hands. My shipwrights know how to fight but they don't." Jinbi gave him a nod and moved further into the dock. "This is the first time a hostage has been taken since I first became mayor. I should get Califa a knife or something so she can defend herself." The captain began to back away, dragging Califa with him as he worked to put distance between himself and the shipwrights of Dock 1. "Stay right over there and get back to work. If any of you come over here I will dash." The captain was cut off as he had gotten close enough to where Icebug was that he jumped out and slammed the sledgehammer against his head, knocking him out cold and freeing Califa. For a moment it was silent, the pirate crew and the shipwrights shocked that the mayor himself just bloodied his hands. Icebug rested the head of the sledgehammer against the captain's throat and began to apply pressure. "I do not take kindly to people threatening my employees and trying to extort us. Shipwrights, teach them a lesson." As he snapped the captain's neck, the shipwrights sprang into action and began to fight against the pirate crew. "Are you hurt, Califa?" "No, I am fine." "I was not expecting you here, sir." Califa fixed her glasses and her clothes as the fight quickly came to an end. "I will inform the Marines about the crew, and I see that Warlord Jinbi is here as well," Califa observed as she retrieved her clipboard. "Do you need anything, Mayor Icebug? Once you collect the bounty on this crew, take some of it for yourself, then send the rest of it into our funds," Icebug said as he lifted the hammer up and rested on his shoulder. "Make sure to have a doctor give you a once-over just to be safe." Kaku. Icebug yelled out, getting the attention of one of his shipwrights. Yes, sir? Kaku came over, his eyes lingering on the sledgehammer for a few moments. From what he remembered, Icebug had used it alongside another hammer as he worked his way up to becoming mayor, the other one being engraved with Tom. Captain Jinbe would like a quality inspection of his ship. I want you to look it over and see if it's damaged anywhere. Oh, and take this. Icebug dug some money out of one of his pockets and handed it over to him. Before Kaku could ask what for, Icebug answered his unspoken question. I want you to buy a knife for Califa so she can use it to defend herself in case something like this happens again. Mayor, that's unnecessary. Califa objected. Not to me, the safety of my employees is a necessity. Make sure it's one she can easily conceal on her person, Icebug instructed Kaku. Califa, Captain Jinbe will need some help setting up the payments for the dismantling of a ship and the inspection of his ship. If you're feeling well enough once you've reported these pirates to the Marines, can you help him with that? Califa nodded. Of course, I'll get right to work on that. I'll go get started on the inspection right away, Kaku said as he ran off. Icebug let out a sigh and rubbed his forehead in frustration. 5th time this week a crew has tried this. Do you need help with security? Jinbe asked as he waited for Califa to return from the Marine outpost. We have good security, it's just that we don't yet have the reputation that warns pirates away from trying to extort us, Icebug explained as he put his sledgehammer back. I need to go check in on a few other places around town. Will you be alright staying here? Of course, if you would like, I could see if Admiral Tsuru could get in contact with Morgans to write a few pieces about Water 7, Jinbe offered. He'd overheard her talking to Sengoku a few times about talking with Morgans on a few events. If you can do that, then I'll owe you one. I need to get going now, sorry for any troubles, Icebug said as he left Dock 1 and started heading for the lower levels. I just need to inspect a couple more spots so I can improve the design, and then we should be able to begin work on it. As he thought of his plans to turn Water 7 into an island ship, he saw a large man with familiar blue hair, although it was gone up far nicer than how Icebug remembered. They both locked eyes and he could see the recognition in the other man's eyes. Before he could say anything, Icebug grabbed him by the arm and pulled him into an unoccupied alleyway, thankfully not being seen by anybody. How the fuck are you alive? Great to see you too, Idiot Berg. And for the first time in years, Icebug heard Frankie's voice. Heard you united all the docks, mind cluing me in on everything else? I've been kinda busy making myself a cyborg and all that. Frankie leaned against the wall and crossed his arms. Not right now and definitely not here. We can meet up at the old workshop later tonight. I'll tell you what I know, I promise, Icebug said as he kept looking around to make sure no one was eavesdropping. Frankie almost protested, but he could see how paranoid Icebug was feeling. Fine, bring something good to eat though. I'll get us some drinks. With Dragon? Dragon let out a long and heavy sigh. Ivankov, did you just tell me that there in fact were Cypher Pole agents among our ranks? Yes, some of them panicked when they heard the reasoning we had come up with initially to get everyone back, allowing us to capture them and get the names of their fellow agents out of them, Ivankov explained, sounding just as tired as Dragon was sure he felt like. We do have some other good news. We managed to round up the last of the members of the secret faction. That's more than good news, Dragon said in relief. We're finishing up putting together our hit list and we should be able to start up all operations again. Betty was also able to look up that Jolly Roger. The crew was captured by the Marines a few hours ago and they are en route to a nearby Marine outpost from what the Den channel said. I'll tell you what route we think the Marines will be using. Dragon let himself give a small smile as things began to finally clear up from the mess holds caused. Koala, make sure to get some sleep and be ready for tomorrow. We'll be collecting the fruit soon. Nighttime, Water 7 with Icebug. Icebug walked through the back alleys of Water 7, avoiding anyone seeing him as he carried a bag in his hands he had gotten from a restaurant that he knew wouldn't ask questions about why he wanted something so late, while another one swung from his elbow. He stopped before the door to the old workshop and took a deep breath. He hadn't been here in a long time. He gave the door a quick knock and then entered. Took you long enough. I was about to start drinking. Frankie yelled out from the office. There were some drinks on the table and some chairs set up, but otherwise the place was bare as Icebug had left it when he had collected what he needed from it and sold off most of everything else. Sorry, it took a bit longer to get all the food than I expected, Icebug said as he sat down and began to set out the food. Frankie sat across from him and opened a bottle of cola. So what did you get? Carne duveda, makika, shuku, barmbrak, crop caker, and 2 loaded burgers for you, Icebug said as he brought them all out and put them on the table. Frankie was surprised by it all. These were all foods they would eat with Tom and Kokoro. You even got all my favorite toppings on it too, he said as he lifted one of the loaded burgers up and looked at it. He took a bite of it and he could taste all the flavors of his childhood with Tom. A beef patty made with chili flakes and garlic, pineapple rings seared in butter. He could even feel the yolk of the egg pop in his mouth just like it used to. He even got the lettuce, tomato, pickled beets, and bacon on it too, Frankie thought to himself as he took another bite. He had designed this burger after Tom took him to a place that let you design your own food based off of basic foods like pizza, soups, and burgers, and he always got to have one after a week of hard work. Swallowing his second bite, Frankie put the burger down and wiped at his eyes as he felt himself begin to tear up. Icebug said nothing as he let Frankie process the flavors of their time with Tom as he ate one of the crop caker. Once he finished eating it, he washed it down with some of the whiskey Frankie had provided and leaned back. How much do you know of what's happened since you supposedly died? Frankie looked up at Icebug as he calmed down from his remembrance. Not much, I just know you united all the docks and Water 7 has been flourishing with this whole crisis going on. I think I might have heard something about Garp the fist turning against the world government. You heard right, and that's not all. Icebug reached into his other bag and took out Tom's wanted poster and handed it to Frankie. Tom's alive. Frankie's eyes widened in shock as he looked the wanted poster. He tentatively took, afraid that if he touched it, it would turn out to be nothing but an illusion. He held it carefully as memories of when his dad was taken on the very train he had built and designed because of the ships Frankie had made flooded his mind. Has he? Frankie's words stopped before he could finish the question. No, and I know why. Frankie thought Icebug was going to say it was because of him, but instead he handed him the plans for Pluton. He doesn't want to risk putting bigger targets on us. Well, I guess just me since you're legally dead. Frankie, I want you to hold on to them and make sure no one gets them. All right. Frankie grabbed the plans and took them into the office and came back. He'd figure out a better hiding spot later. So what now? Let's eat, and I want to talk to you about something. Icebug grabbed a slice of the barmbrack and began to butter it. I'm planning on building an official dismantling yard for Water 7. We have a massive backlog since all of the docks are busy making new ships or doing repairs. Frankie, could you manage it for me? Why me? Frankie asked before he took a bite of his burger. Because I also want blueprints made of each of the ships we dismantle so we can use them as references for when we make new ships or have to repair other ships that are of a similar make and model. And I trust you to know what you're doing with a ship, Icebug explained. Frankie finished his first burger as he pondered the offer. How far along is the yard? It's in the beginning stages of construction. It's currently estimated to take a few months, although given how skilled the construction workers have become with the various additions and repairs that they've had to do around Water 7 since the crisis started, it'll most likely be shorter than that, Icebug explained as he grabbed one of the shuku and bit into it. Frankie downed the rest of his cola and opened another bottle to get started on as he got started on his second burger. I'll need a couple weeks to find some people that could help me out with that, but I know I can get something started. I'll do it, but don't expect me to help with repairs or building any ships. I'll just make you the blueprints from the ones I helped dismantle, alright? I understand, Icebug gave Frankie a small smile. If he was being honest, if he had met up with Frankie without having gone through the insanity of the current crisis, he would have treated him with more hatred, but he had learned better meeting the many clients of Galila and Water 7. I don't know when we can meet up again like this, so ask away and I'll tell you what I can. Frankie gave his brother in all but blood a wide smile. Well, first let me tell you how I managed to survive and turn myself into a cyborg. The next day with Dragon. Dragon took a deep breath as they neared the contact point with the marine ship holding the age fruit. Koala, I want you to protect the ship while I go retrieve the fruit. We can't run the risk of it sinking and cutting us off from escape. Understood, Koala said as she adjusted the sails. How difficult do you think this will be? Hopefully it will be easy, but realistically there will always be something we can't expect that gets in our way, Dragon answered as he helped keep the ship on its course. I just hope I won't have to use it. Revealing it now after hiding it from the world government's knowledge for so long could affect our future plans. We need as many surprises as we can unleash on them when the final battle comes. Marine ship ahead. Koala yelled as she got to her station, shaking Dragon from his thoughts as he ran to the nose. As they got close, Dragon ran up the nose of the ship and jumped, grabbing onto the railing of the marine ship and using it to propel himself further into the air. He landed on the deck, kneeling and his cloak covering him entirely. Giving the crew a cursory glance, most of them were injured and had bandages and casts. It was clear their battle with the pirates had not been easy, but they all were ready for a fight. I would rather not get into a fight, surrender and allow me to take the devil fruits you took from the pirate crew you defeated, and I will be on my way. He gave the offer out, not really expecting them to accept, since in the past when he had given the offer out it hadn't been accepted. But his father had taught him to always show his enemies the slightest amount of respect so that you don't underestimate them. The Marine captain stepped forward, using a crutch to keep himself steady. "Do you swear by that offer?" Dragon was surprised that they were considering. "My word is my bond, since the laws of the world government do not bind me." The captain squinted at him. "Your father trained this entire crew, you know, we all owe him debts. I do not speak for all of us, but I do speak for myself when I say I'm done serving the world government. We were sent after this pirate crew as a means to stall them so that more capable Marines could stop them. We were fodder to them. We fought tooth and nail and to keep everyone alive and even managed to beat the crew. Yet it kind of scolded us because the pirates were able to dump some of their loot into the sea. He said that we should have fought harder, given our lives to retrieve every bit of treasure the pirates had stolen. He said that because we couldn't get it all back that the pirates had won." The captain slammed his crutch against the deck in anger and stumbled slightly. He was caught by one of his crew members who helped him steady himself. "So, allow me to extend an offer of our own. We would like to join the Revolutionary Army." The captain extended his free hand to Dragon. "It's clearly one way to repay our debts, Garp, helping take down the world government." The other crew members began to voice their agreement as Dragon looked at the captain's outstretched hand in shock. Dragon collected himself and shook the captain's hand. "Very well, welcome to the army." He gave a small smile to the captain, although he dreaded the conversation he was going to have with Kuma about Bikori. It had truly been an interesting week. It started off absolutely horrible, but Dragon was able to smile at the end of it at least. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. Support the writer. Don't forget to like, sub, share and donate for more videos.